Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I don't think there was any way I could have realised that when I started podcasting that I was actually triggering a series of events that would ultimately lead to a intergalactic war.
Ant McGinley, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
So it's your new trademark. A statement before we start.
Yeah, just mix that in together nicely. It sounds great.
What did you say last time?
The first time I said I think podcasting could save the world.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Which you could argue it has.
Yeah, possibly. although actually technically if you think about it in terms of the amount of energy data centers that it needs to hold everything that's being streamed, you could argue that it's a bigger contributor to global warming than fossil fuels. But hey, let's not split hairs.
Maybe. So it's next month it would be 4 years since we were first on the show in the studio, in our old studio.
Yeah.
And then in 2021 I did the lockdown ones.
And look how far we've both come.
I know. So you've just come back from the Fringe Festival.
Yes.
So you made your podcast into a live show. Is that how you
Yes.
describe it?
Well, what I would say actually is it's not a podcast. And I would advise anybody, and this is a thing I've been doing for a few years, is don't put a limitation on what you're doing.
Okay.
So it's a show.
Yes.
It is a thing.
I suppose as far as punters who are there who will come across it, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, I
They'll
mean, I think in all the live shows that we've done, we've maybe had 3 people that listen to the podcast that we know of that came to the show, and we know them. So
Yes.
we knew them before the podcast, so that was there. But also it taught me as well, it's a different thing, especially at the level we're at where we're not quite mega stars yet. You have a lot of people that are coming in, sometimes because they've seen you on the street, sometimes they've seen the flyer, the marketing. And what's really interesting with that is we're now looking at ways possibly reverse engineering what we do as a show, because our live show has become built on what we started in the podcast.
Yes.
And then what we've created through the character. But then actually some of the stuff people see out in the street it gives them a different impression.
Yeah.
And so should we work towards that?
So let's go back in time. So what is the podcast? When did the Wrestling with the Champ start?
Wrestling with the Champ started 3 years ago. We just celebrated our 3-year champiversary a couple of months ago.
And the concept of that is?
So very simply, if you've listened to the Peter Crouch podcast, that kind of retired sporting person speaks to a journalist about what it's like to be a sports person. So that format, but the format is about a retired wrestler. And if you imagine Hulk Hogan and Alan Partridge being the
What a combination.
the DNA donors for this wrestler.
Aha, brother.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Aha. Yeah, so that's the basis of the character.
This was your idea. Came from your mind.
So this came from Damien's mind that I do the show
Damien
with.
St. John.
Damien St. John, who plays himself in the podcast. And I would say
Yes.
that in the podcast, in the show.
So the podcast is a series of interviews between you and him. Or conversations, I should say.
Kind of. That's how it started,
Yes.
but it's evolved from that.
Yes.
And actually, one thing I really enjoy about the project is more so recently, but even from the very beginning, each episode sort of changed in what it did. So it started off very much like a lot of podcasts, 2 people in a room talking, and then we went on adventures. So we've gone from being at actual wrestling events, commentating on them, getting involved in those wrestling events, being at awards for wrestling, being on film sets where I've been doing some getting a big break in that. And then more recently, we did a zombie episode last year for Halloween. And then speaking of going back in time, our most recent episode set in the Edinburgh Fringe this year is about the Champ becoming the new doctor's assistant. Sorry, I say doctor, copyright reasons, the proctor's assistant.
Ha.
Yeah.
So it must have got some traction straight away for you to enable you to do all this.
Define traction.
As in, you realised you were getting a lot of people listening and good downloads, which encourages you to sort of say...
Define a lot of listeners.
Well, I mean, so you realised you had an audience. As in,
Yeah,
it wasn't a case of nobody's listening.
I mean, I'd say from the off we had triple figures. 3. Which is me and Damien and his wife under duress.
But you're an experienced podcaster, so you would see the signs of, this has got legs. This could go somewhere. which is what it would encourage you to then think of, well, what else could we do this? How could we push this?
I think there was an element of when it started, it was about how, sorry, speaking of being an experienced podcaster, let's make sure that's being picked up on the mic correctly. I think because of the time in which it happened, that wasn't a factor. It was more a case of it was a creative outlet. It was a time when we had lots of time on our hands to do stuff, and it was just trying something. And Damien, that I write the show with, he's a very good writer. He was actually shortlisted by BAFTA a couple of years ago, which he never tires of telling people about. And I think he envisaged that, by the time he turned 40, he'd be living in LA, writing for, some studio. And then he sort of realized that age had come and passed and it hadn't happened. And we'd done a few different projects together, and funnily enough, we were working on this other idea, which was a kind of pastiche of James O'Brien. It was called The Phone-In Show. And that's actually just made an appearance in a recent episode of Wrestling with the Champ, where the Champ calls into this radio show, The Phone-In Show. So we had all the production and everything there made and ready to go. So that was quite nice. So we kind of built this whole universe. So I think the key thing was, if you're going to do anything, especially in a world like podcasting or possibly YouTube, and you're only going to do it if it gets traction/success straight away, you're not going to do it for very long. I think that's the reality situation. And similarly for anybody that's in a band or acting, whatever creative field that is, I think if you and I wish you every success whatever you're doing. I really hope it works out for you. But I think at the same time, it's not likely to happen. Just from my more recent experience, we took the show up to Edinburgh.
Yes.
Second year in the row we've done the Edinburgh Fringe Festival
With the Champ podcast.
With the Champ, right. and there are 3,304 different shows on at the time at the Fringe.
Wow.
And that's over a 4-week period. 3 week. And I tried to see a lot of shows when I was up there, as well as doing my own. I only managed to fit in like 11.
How long were you there for?
So we just did seven days this year, and then I took 2 days to go and see a lot of shows.
Cool.
And I managed to see 11 different shows.
Nice.
Which was great. And if you think about it, that's really intense, because in a normal sort of week or a month, most people are going to maybe see one a month, just in terms of like having kids, work commitments, just being knackered. And also finances with the way things are.
Yeah.
So you're doing well if you're going to one gig a month, maybe a couple. And so I saw 10 in a very compressed amount of time. And it's great for that. It's expensive to be there, but you can get your money's worth when you're up there.
So this is what I was going to ask you. So if you were a performer or someone had you considered a podcast that was like you could turn to a live show, where do you begin if you want to play at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival? How does it work? I'm assuming you have to apply.
Yeah. The difference was the first time we did it very, very last minute. So we'd done a live show for the Leicester Comedy Festival in February, and that went well, and people didn't hate us, and it was quite fun. And so we thought, well, why don't we do Edinburgh? That was the next suggestion. And so that was right towards the cut-off point, in terms of applying and getting in there. And then we the first thing that happened, we actually managed to get through the promoter that had been one of the promoters that had been in Leicester. We managed to get some traction from them. We had a conversation about them, and they told us they'd be interested in taking us on. They offered us a slot for the full run, which is great. And then they gave us the breakdown.
This is what I have no clue about, because obviously you also didn't ever know when you were thought, how much does it cost?
Yes,
what do we have to do?
I think it's safe to say I almost had a breakdown when they gave me that. To the point where, so the way it broke down was with this promoter, they were going to get us a room that would hold, I think 50 or 60 people, and you effectively hire the room for the run.
And you have to pay for the hire?
Yeah, you pay for the hire, and then they take... So you pay for the hire up front, and then they would also take a cut of your ticket sales. But they would do the promotion. They would be out flying. You'd be everywhere. So that's a real big help on that.
Yep.
And so I think for 45 minutes every day, and I'm not 100% sure on this because it's a little while now and I've had a lot of figures and a lot of things, but it's about $3,000.
Right.
And then we were looking at a similar bill for our accommodation.
Wow.
And that all came in sort of one sort of 30-second window. All that.
So even if you sold out your venue,
so we basically
would you still be not making money?
we would have to, if we'd done it that way, we would have had to sell 50% of the venue every show just to break even, and that wouldn't even cover our meals or living when we're up there.
Yeah.
Now, just to put things in perspective, the average audience for an Edinburgh show is 6.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
That's probably got down to the fact that people have got so much choice.
Yeah, and there's so many things on, and trying to find it and getting all
You've
those
got to be
other places.
loud enough to catch people to come in.
And the thing is that can change throughout the run. So there's a brilliant show there, which I highly recommend anybody who likes mythology or wrestling to look out for this, because it will be on tour in various places, called Mythos Ragnarok. And it is the story, the original Norse legend of Thor and Loki, but it's told in wrestling. And so whenever there's a conflict, they wrestle, and it's really good. And because it's in a theatre setting, you're much closer. There's no ropes. You're really you're getting sweat on.
Yeah.
Other things. It's brilliant. And that show sold out every performance this year. Last year, on the very first show, there was one person in the audience.
I have heard a lot of these stories.
And word of mouth, it grew and grew and grew and grew. So that's the kind of thing that happens. There's a bit of a buzz that comes around. But again, that's not guaranteed for everyone.
So I'm assuming a lot of people would do, like, we're going to save up some money. We know it's going to cost. We know we might lose out. But if we can cover that side of it, then we can just focus on doing what we do. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, but the thing is, what you've got to realise is there's a big difference between going, I'm going to go and do this because it's something I'm passionate about and I like, and then also kind of saying, sorry kids, you can't eat this week because daddy's going off on which is one of the reasons why I don't have children. So
and it's starved to death.
Yes. And that creates all kind of problems. I mean, there's the smell. There's anyway, legal issues. I think the thing was that really hit me when I looked at it at the time, and I was like, okay, that's a lot. And I was physically sick. I went to bed that night and I was like, okay, I need to think this over. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. That was the feeling. Because at the time I wasn't flush either. I was still coming back after COVID. A lot of people hit in different ways. I was like, and also I was going to have to stop other work while I was doing this. I was like, I don't know if I can justify it. Anyway, I woke up the next day having not slept on it, and I had this thought, which was, what will make the better story? Will it be, I could have done a show in Edinburgh. I could have gone to the Fringe and done a show. Or I did this show in Edinburgh and then had a really interesting conversation with my landlord. And I decided to go for that. But at which point we discovered this wonderful thing called the PBH Free Fringe. Now, the PBH Free Fringe is a charity that puts on venues across Edinburgh throughout the festival for aspiring artists in a way that makes it affordable. In other words, they provide you a venue for free. So you don't get listed in the Edinburgh Fringe guide, but they have their own blue book that they put around. You can still get registered in the Edinburgh. It's a couple of £100 that gets you on the website and the app and those things, which are very helpful. Free Fringe have other resources that they do that. But this is a charity that runs on a budget of about 28 grand a year. And they do an incredible job. And without them, a lot of shows would not be able to be there. A lot of artists that have come through would simply not be able to be there and do what they do. And it's about so much more than the kudos of being there. And it's about so much more than being discovered when you're up there. I think for me, from us as a creative duo, being there was like the most incredible boot camp. It was, I imagine it's similar to being on tour in a band. It's that refining your craft, that mastering, that honing it in front of people
in real time.
Exactly. And the difference is, I guess, having not been in a band, but you have, rehearsals are very much like recording a podcast because you're only in the presence of yourself. Suddenly when you bring it out and you're in front of a paying audience, it's such a different experience. absolutely 100% different.
That's what you've got to try and have in your mind when you're doing rehearsals or recordings. Is that what it's going to be like
Yeah,
when you are in front of people?
yeah, completely. And suddenly the performance becomes more of it. You realize that sometimes you need to move around more or not move around as much. But the other thing is it also taught me a great thing about confidence in terms of being up there, in that sometimes you would look out into the audience and you think, oh my God, they hate it. They hate it. They hate me. This person in the front row particularly hates me, right? Right. And then at the end of the show, they'd come up to you and they'd go, oh my God, that was amazing. That was the best thing I ever saw. And you're so confused because of the look they had on their face.
You soon learn to forget. Don't even think. You're overthinking it if you're doing that. Just carry on. Focus on what you're doing.
And either that they were just like, some people concentrate with really weird facial expressions. That's what it is. Or maybe they've got something in the contact lens, or they've forgotten their glasses, but they're really engaged in it. And then other times people look like they're really enjoying it, but it's just that they, just before they came into the show,
they're drunk.
Yeah, which is something very interesting. Actually, we had a great experience in the last show that we did. So we try and have a lot of audience participation in what we do.
Oh, you get them to heckle you.
In some ways, yeah. Well, we it's more that we distribute things into the audience, and sometimes those are physical items and sometimes those are skills which come back. So for example, in the first show that we did last year, the book's available to buy, of the script, by the way, in the first show that we did last year, what part of the show is that I teach a member of the audience how to be a wrestler, and I teach them and one of the key parts of that is I teach them a finishing move, and the move is we called it the Will Smith, which is the big slap, but for COVID reasons, it just had to be on the back.
Oh, the Smith.
Yeah. And so we get them up. We teach them to do this big slap. There's some wonderful. Actually, if you go to our Instagram, you can have a look. And if you scroll down to sort of last year, you'll see.
Sound effects of the slap.
It's not the sound effect, but you can actually see the impact. Because what happened was we were doing the show. We did sort of 9 or 10 performances last year.
The champ, is it?
Yeah. There's a Sporty Spice who was on the show.
Yes.
There we are, just up there. So what we do is just pull somebody out from the audience, and as we played around, we changed around with different things, and then Damien, who do the show with, started pulling people out to be in the show, and by the end of the week he was just pulling out the biggest, strongest looking people that he could find, and they all turned out to be actual professional wrestlers. Like this guy here, this is Voodoo in the middle. So he actually wrestles, and he's like 6'7", I want to say. He can pick me up and throw me around like a doll. I'm 6'2". With the full
perspective on that photo there.
Is he crouching?
So he's crouching down. We're all. I think I'm on a bench in that part. But there's from the show that we did, he picked me up and threw me around.
That's Damien.
Yeah, this is Damien that I do the show with.
He looks like a nice guy.
If we go back to the list, and obviously for people that are listening to this, just go to our Instagram. It is the Champ.
That's a cool photo.
Podcast.
That one on the right there.
Oh yeah, now that one is great.
Yeah, that one.
So that's at the Edinburgh Fringe, and what I love about this picture is this is a little stage outdoor by the one of the museums on the Royal Mile, and there's pictures of Billy Connolly and Eddie Izzard doing shows there, and I personally didn't feel that we went down well in this show. I felt it was awful. But then I was looking at these pictures again, and I thought, actually, you can't tell how badly they went down. So I was like, what's important is that,
good photo,
that we were there and we did it. So it's wonderful to be there and do that. But yeah, so if we keep scrolling down, there's some pictures from last year. I mean, we put a lot of pictures on.
Is it quite far down?
Yeah. This is the thing where we should have really worked this out and thought about this a little bit earlier. Yeah. Oh, this is when
I'm just enjoying this content. This is
yeah. So there's lots on here. So I think we're starting to get close to it now.
So is it just you two just all got this content, everything?
Everything is just the two of us.
It's really good.
Yeah. So
really good.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. There we go. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You can actually see the bones of the hands. That's from a wrestler called Ian Skinner.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That hurts to look at.
Yeah. And that was so what happens is we teach them this move, they do it, and then at the end of the show, I choke and I'm dying on stage. And so Damien puts out this appeal and goes, is there anybody out there that's trained, maybe a medic or somebody? And then that gets the person comes up to get involved. And
if you only listened, you need to go on YouTube and watch the video version of this because that is horrendous.
yeah, I mean, it's just that was last August. It's just about come down now. The swelling, so that's
those are some real.
It's still there now.
yeah,
Getting tattooed on.
yeah. So there we go. That is suffering from it. So
That's what
so when
people
people
think
say
wrestling
that,
is fake.
exactly, the pain is real.
That
the
looks like a
bruises are
strange
real.
angle for a slap as well.
Well,
yeah, it's kind of like you're going like this.
They've done it like it's like an inside.
It's an
slap.
actual whip.
It's
They've
a Ric Flair foot slap.
Yeah, they've gone full on, but yeah, that's
Wow.
suffering for your art, as they say, and yeah, so there's lots of various. Actually, this is quite a nice little video if you want to have a look at this. Although you'll have to kill the sound on it because we don't have the rights to play Iggy Pop. But
right, okay.
while we were in Edinburgh last year, we recreated this one.
Yeah,
We recreated the famous scene from Trainspotting, from the opening sequence, where Renton is running down the street having stolen something, and
the San Summers one here.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I'm not suggesting he stole it from Ann Summers, but we did our own version, and we just did it as like running to the venue.
Rust for life.
Yes.
Love
So people could. So it's the same streets, the same bits that Renton runs down,
Oh yes,
including these steps.
that's brilliant.
And then if you've seen Trainspotting 2 as well, we did a little nod
Yes.
to the sequel where they run past themselves at this point. And so, yeah. But this is one
Brilliant.
of the things that we really enjoyed. So even though we were working so hard, we were flat out doing the performances. It's such a creative space to be in. We
Yeah.
found every day we were waking up and we were creating great video
Just
content.
ideas just flowing. Just
Yeah,
yeah.
And this is the thing that I've learned is that creatively, the worst thing that you can do for me is to just get away from everything, be by a lake and be quiet and do that. For me to be creative, I need to be inspired. So that could be going to see a band, coming to a great setup like a place like this and going, wow, this is amazing. Or even just, I went to see my mate Mick. He's a plasterer. I met him at work. One of the jobs
Watched
he
him
was doing.
work.
No, we were going to go for a coffee, and I came down to the house he was working on, and I was looking around and I was like, that looks like marble, and I just watched him for a minute, and I found that inspirational. And so actually, what happened? I came back from Edinburgh last year, buzzing and popping with ideas, and this is a wonderful example of life imitating art. I had this idea where a lot of wrestling in general is puns, right? In terms of wrestler names, events, all those kinds of things. And then we try and take it to the next level. So I just had this thought just popped in my head and we got to do this. Pay-per-view. Right? Pay-per-view. And if we scroll, there's a little video, if we scroll up a little bit, we met a guy who, we were just walking about in our outfit, who ran a churros van.
I love churros.
And maybe we passed him. Come back down again. Come back down.
Okay.
Probably
I
got
had
past him.
churros yesterday at the Great
Yeah.
North Run.
And he, how are you feeling from that as well? You
I
speaking
didn't do it in the end.
Okay.
I took somebody across who was doing it, and I cheered some people on.
Yeah. It might, I think the churros might be on the.
And then we got stuck in the flood on the way out.
If we go back to the folder I shared, the churros videos on there.
Oh, I see.
Champ
It's
versus
just
churros.
churros,
Yeah.
right, okay,
So
here we
we can do the sound on this as well. So
Ant's
basically-
come bringing
yeah.
his own content.
Yeah.
This is brilliant.
So we walked past. We were out flying and promoting for the Edinburgh Fringe, and that's one of the things we realised when we were up there last year for the first time, is that if you're just listening to this, I am aware. Find the pause.
Why is it not?
Pop up in the bottom corner. Get rid of that.
Spacebar.
What the hell's happening?
Yeah, there we go.
Get rid of that one in the bottom corner. And it's probably behind there.
Yeah.
What?
It's because you're in Google Drive. Hit the close, and then you can go back.
There you go.
Yeah, and drop the volume down. So hold that for a second. So very quickly we realised on the first day of doing promoting and flyering and having spent the minimum order of 2,000 flyers, which is not the most environmental thing, especially when there's a bin strike on. We got these flyers. We went out, and very quickly we realised that most of the people who are out flyering were middle-aged white men saying, "Do you want to see some comedy?" And the variation on that was Irish comedians. That was it. And so suddenly we were like, okay,
We've got to do something different.
yeah. And there's just thousands of people around, and they've already got armsfuls of flyers because everyone's out doing the same thing. Now, one of the things is we have quite a visual element to the show, because when I'm in character, there's quite a great costume that we've collated and put together.
You attract attention.
And so what we did, instead of doing the traditional flyering, was we didn't flyer. which sounds counterproductive, but stick with me. So what we did was every day before the show, we did a ring walk, but the ring walk was around Edinburgh. And so I would just walk ahead, and then behind me, Damien would be there in his pink sparkly jacket, and we had a referee. And I didn't flyer anyone. I did not flyer anyone. But anybody that high-fived me, took a photograph, fist bumped me, had a little laugh, whatever, we would then flyer them.
Yeah.
And that was a really effective way of doing it, because every day we were getting 3 or 4 or 5 people would come to the show because they'd seen us out and about.
Yeah.
And they'd have this kind of interaction with us. Occasionally it went too far. We'd just been moved along by some security because I'd been stood up on a plinth, and they were like, no, because other people do this. But everyone had been around taking my picture and that. And we came by Waverley Station, which is the main station in Edinburgh, and walked into this little open-air cafe area. And the security guard, stopped me and said something. And at first I was like, oh, he's moving. We've not even gone in and he's moving us on. And then he said something, and I was like, what did he say? And he said, you're on my path. And I went, oh, you want this? Because I've got the belt on and everything. He says, oh, so you want this? And he went, that belt is mine. I said, well, if you want it, why don't you come for it right now? Right? And then we just threw down in this cafe. There is a video of this somewhere. But basically what happened was, because it wasn't prepared. We didn't know if this guy was a raging psychopath or like just somebody having a laugh or whatever. We literally just bumped into him, and he was working. He takes his earpiece out, takes his radio off, right? And then just dives for me like that. So I have him in a headlock. I'm like elbowing him like that. And then he throws me right, bump into Damien. Damien drops the camera. So the video stops there. But then what happens is, I think that's quite cool. That's quite funny. Everyone's laughing and clapping. And then he comes and he drop kicks me, right? So I go back on the floor. Then he comes over and pins me. Some bloke who's just there in Edinburgh with his girlfriend. He's having a pint. As he pins me, the guy puts his pint down, slides over, and does the 3 count. Right? And the thing was, like, there may be video out of it. That's an appeal. I'm going to put that out right now. Get in touch with the show. Get in touch with us if you happen to be there and film that. But it was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. On the other end of the scale, we had this on the other side of Waverley. A couple of days later, we saw this guy with a beard who clocked me and was obviously a wrestling fan, and he was about my size. And I just walked up to him, squared up to him, and like gave him like a lot of trash talk. And I was like, I told you if I ever saw you in my town, all this kind of stuff. And he was giving it back loads. And we're getting really into it. And I'm just fully aware, like, I become the character. I'm in this. And we had this idea that everybody that we would see in the street was somebody that he'd fought. This was the idea. So maybe no matter how old they were or how
littered with former foes.
Yeah. And so so it's basically squaring up to this guy, and I'm like centimeters from his face. This is not long after COVID, so probably not a really good idea. And then I just hear this voice as we're giving it loads like that going, "Is this a performance?" Yeah. And I went no. But you want to see a performance? Wait till you see what I do to his face, right? And that was a police officer. who had seen us and thought something suspicious was going on, and then I just had Damien coming over going, no, it is, it's a show, so yes, I did nearly get arrested for doing that. And then what happened with this little churros video, which is, I mean, it's a great video, but what happens next is even more incredible. But the video is basically, we walked past, we were doing this flyering, you can see me in the sparkly pigeon, the glittery pigeon as we call
Sparkly pigeon.
And it's like silver fish scale cloak that I wear. I've got my gold tights on, the champ t-shirt, the headband, and of course the hair that gives me the title, the Mick Hucknall of wrestling. And we'd walk past. This guy was running this churros van. He said, "I love your outfit. What's your show? Give us some flyers, and I'll put them out for you." I was like, "Oh, brilliant, guy." And I said, "Thanks very much. That's great." He says, do you want some ice cream, some churros, anything like that?" I know, yeah. And then he gave it us for free. And I was like, "Mate, you're doing us a favour. At least let us buy it." He says, No. Like,
wow. And
so he really looked after us. And then so we'd see him throughout the sort of couple of days that we were up there. And then we saw him more and more. And this guy was just like hairdresser by trade during the event. he helps out and does this show, a bit of extra money. And he says, you know what? I've been working here since I've always wanted to beat someone with churros. And I went, mate, we can make that happen.
I am the man for that.
So what we did was we set it up very basically in that we slipped him a luchador mask, and then and then what happened was we slipped him this luchador mask, and then we said give him a 2-minute warning. He got one of his crew to come out and film. Damien came up to film as well, and then I arrive on the scene, and chaos ensues, which we can see now on the video.
God. Of course, it's a luchador mask.
That's awesome. There he is. Look at him.
What? I told you if I ever saw you in my town again, I would make you pay. Come now, and the time to pay. Do this now.
The whole thing's spelled out now.
Okay, people.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, so that was we did that on the last day that we were in Edinburgh, and we just set that up and we filmed it, and then we came back, and this is where it starts to get cool and then weird. So we then launched our new season of the podcast, season 4, and the first episode was Churros. So this is how much thought we'd give it him. He was called Churros, and the first episode of the season was kind of based on the Michael Jackson documentary after he died. And
This is it.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So they put it together from the footage.
Rehearsal footage and interviews and stuff like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So this was the idea. So this was back in the day, and before there was a podcast, but there was these little bits of CCTV footage and these things that we put the show together.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was when the Champ had been in a tag team with this luchador called Churros, but they'd fallen out, and so it was the backstory
It's
to
the
this
classic,
video.
isn't it? Yeah.
So we basically wrote a backstory to this video, and this is when I had one of my moments of inspiration, and I went, pay-per-view, right? So the pay-per-view, right? So you pay a pie to watch the fight. And then we took it a stage further, and so what happened, this particular event, instead of being in a steel cage, it was in the cavey of gravy. We actually made an arena out of pastry and filled it with gravy.
Nice.
And then we fight in this thing, and we fall out, and it ends up that the luchador Churros turns on him. Anyway, fast forward almost a year to the day. Having done Edinburgh this year, we find ourselves being invited to compete in the World Gravy Wrestling Championships.
Yeah.
So we turn up in character as the champ, and they don't really know who I am, but they've paired me up, and the guy they've paired me up with is a luchador, right? And so I'm fighting him in gravy, and it's only like a couple of days afterwards when I'm looking at the footage that it suddenly dawns on me that it's the ultimate case of life imitating art,
Yeah.
right? So or I am a master manifester, which means if that is the case, this time next year I will be in the new Doctor Who.
There you go. Yeah.
So based on the episode we just put out. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So how did the first year work out for you?
The first year worked out really well. I mean, considering that Damien's done stand-up comedy before, and this was my first move into really doing stand-up. Anybody that's done that, generally you start off, you have do 2-minute sections, you build up to having a 5-minute spot is what you have. You take that around for about a year, you build up 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you might get a headline. And so Damien had done all that before and then moved into radio. But my first 2 stand-up shows, in fact, my first...
As in just you doing stand-up?
Well, this is me. We were in that kind of space of cabaret performance.
Right.
Yeah. So my first sort of 20 shows were all 40, 45-minute long performances.
Right.
Which is quite a different thing. But a real curveball, real learning curve, should I say. Although I did do a 5-minute solo spot this year. for the first time.
Of just stand up.
Just stand up, yeah.
Wow.
So as a champ. So
How much time did you have to prepare for that?
About. Well, it was the day before I got invited along to do it. So come and do 5 minutes. And so we just did a compressed version of some of the stuff we'd done before.
I see, right, yeah.
And so this guy called Che Burnley, who runs the Alternative Black Comedy Showcase, which he invited me to be a part of as a token white guy. And and actually he is going to feature in our next episode of the podcast. He is the title role in Andrew the Giant, which is the next episode of our podcast. So that was... I've lost where we were going.
About last year.
Yeah, we just did so much in terms of that. We spent a lot of time on the street. I think we kind of went into Edinburgh not knowing what to expect, which is great in some ways. But I think we maybe spent a lot of time and a lot of energy in things that didn't really sort of bring us the returns.
Yeah.
But it's still a good learning curve. Really pleased with what we did. Also, we were in a venue that was right on the far end of the strip, whereas we were very much closer to the main happening this year. Although in terms of numbers, it varies. We did a couple of sellout shows last year and one this year. But we did slightly more shows, and then we did more guest spots this time as well. So although we did a one day where we did 3 shows in one day.
Wow.
So we did a guest spot at Dropkick Murphys. Then we did our show, which, by the way, was classic for the champ, and the character fitted perfectly. We were downstairs at Burrito and Shake. Yeah. Of course, meat and dairy. What a great combination. So we were... that's where the show was. We were in a basement in a fast food bar. That was where the show was. This is just anybody that thinks this is all glamour and showbiz. Let me just explain to you this venue. You came down the stairs, everything was set out. We got on stage. To the right of us was an open door to the kitchen, right? So every now and then somebody would come out and would walk across the stage with an order for upstairs. So we spoke to them, and we managed to make a little route around the back, so they'd come around the back, so that was fine. However, you'd occasionally get delivery people that would come in, and you know what delivery people are like. You know, I'm on the clock, I've got places to go, get back to the car, just cut straight through. So you're in the middle, and they come across and deliver chicken guts or whatever it is into the kitchen. And then the business that, the guy that owns the business, I think he owns about 5 or 6 on the same street, and they share some of the facilities because not all of them have got access to different bits. And there was one show where Damien was doing the opening introduction, and these 2 ladies came down the stairs with a wheelie bin that was full. And there was another door right behind the stage section, which took them out to where the bins were. So they had to sort of like crash the stage and take that out. That is the show. And then the other thing was, there was the toilets at the bottom of the stairs. So people would come in, and you'd think, you know, are you coming? So it became a common thing where people came down the stairs a bit cautiously. Damien would go, comedy or poo? Invariably, it was poo a lot more than that. But we did this show. We did our show there, and then we went back. What had happened was we realised we'd left a prop, which was quite crucial. Thankfully, we had a spare, but I didn't want to lose this because it's good to have it. So we were running back to the other venue to get the prop. And as we walked in, bear in mind, we'd done this little guest 5-10 minutes before, early in the day. They said, "Oh, are you wrestling with the champ?" And I said, "I'm still in the gear." So like, yes, I am. I'm not Mick Hucknall. Not Mick Hucknall on a stag do. No, it is me. And so they said, "Can you do another spot for us?" I was like, "Yeah, when?" And they went, "In about a minute." I was like, "Okay." She said, "Look, like they're dying. You know, we need a little bit of injection of and whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So, 90 seconds later, we end up on stage doing the show again. And then, great, gone down really well. It's been brilliant. But, we then sort of add up the day, how it's gone. And we had a bit of a technical error with the card payment machine that we had, various reasons. Some would say it's the Wi-Fi. Some would say it's the technology. Some might say I forgot to turn Bluetooth on my phone. Whatever the reason, it didn't work, right? So
So no payments went through.
no payments went through, but we had some in cash. But that day we'd done 3 shows, and the kitty was £7.
You'd forgot to turn Bluetooth on for all 3 shows.
No, so when we do the guest spots, we don't. It's somebody else's show, and
I
you
see,
promote
right,
what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
So there's only the one performance where we
Right.
could charge, and yeah, I fucked up
dear.
on that. Yeah, so we'd done 3 shows.
You learnt the hard way.
We had £7, and anybody that's been to Edinburgh during festival time will know that is the cost of a pint. So we had a choice, which was we could share a pint, or we could get a cab home. And we looked on Uber, and it was £7.50. I'm like, we'll take the hit. So we get this cab, we get in, and just get chatting to the cab driver. It's like a 10-minute ride, and lovely Moldovan chap called Ruslan, and we're talking about our day and our show, and he's talking about his life and how he finds Edinburgh. He's been there for a while, and he goes back occasionally. And Moldova's one place I can't remember if I've been to or not, which sounds really arrogant, but from my days in travel, I went to so many places. Anyway, we talk, and we arrive at our digs, and we go to get out. And before we get out, he says, "Oh, just one second," and he reaches over to his glove box. Now, I assumed that he's going to give us his business card, just like, "You're here all week. I'm here. Give me a call. Nice people. I'll come pick you up. Maybe do it off the books." That's what my thinking is, you know. And Damien assumes he's reaching to give us some kind of Moldovan delicacy, like here's what all the kids are eating in Moldova. And he reaches and he hands something back to me, and I take this in my hand, and I'm like, "What's this?" And he says, "That's your tips." He's given us a £5. I was like, "But what?" He said, that's for you, for your show. It's your tips. And I was like, "Mate, how lovely." So we got out of the cab, and he drove off. And I was like, "Did that just happen?" And of course it did, because I'm still holding this, albeit it's a Scottish £5 note. No good to me. So he held this in my hand. I'm like, okay. And we walked back, and it just suddenly changed the dynamic of the day completely.
Mm-hmm.
Although in some ways it's open to interpretation, because effectively somebody who came to this country as an immigrant and who was struggling, wasn't earning very much money, gave me all of their money from that day, which shows you how badly it was going for us. Or you could go down the milk of human
It's a
kindness.
very kind gesture.
Yeah, but yeah. So the moments like that happen.
You hear of stories of people. That's one of the wonders of the Fringe. Is there's so many endless possibilities and randomness that can happen, and you have a plan, but it never quite works out that way. But it can often be beneficial because.
But I think that's the same thing with anything creative or
Yeah,
entrepreneurial.
as a creative,
is like if you don't do it, the worst thing that can happen is everything stays the same.
Yeah.
And if you do it, like the doors that open up to you, you know. So we one of the guys that beat me up on the stage last year, when we got back home about a month later, got a message from him, and basically he'd listened to every single episode we'd done of the podcast.
Nice.
On the journey home, which is probably a good few hours at the time, and then sent us an audition tape. And we weren't asking for auditions, but he just sent us this. So we were like, okay then. So, and that was voodoo. And so we wrote our Halloween episode all about voodoo, about about the champ fighting voodoo and what happened. We also had a guy featuring it who did a show about breaking his penis when he was at school. And we'd been to see his show, this American guy, Joey Rinaldi. We'd been on a showcase with him, and we kind of bonded, and then he ended up being a guest character in our show, and then he runs comedy nights in Brooklyn. He's invited us over there for when we do our American tour, which is definitely on the list of things to happen. And yeah, just all these things, these connections that have happened. Brilliantly, we've had a few things. So we came straight from doing Edinburgh last year. We went to Clash at the Castle, which here's the big reveal now. Here's the scandal. My first ever wrestling event.
That's the rest. I was going to say, for people who don't know, that is a wrestling event.
Yeah.
WWE in it.
Yeah, so WWE Clash at the Castle, first big wrestling event for ages. Drew McIntyre robbed, and also Tyson Fury doing karaoke at the end of it.
Was Brock Lesnar at that?
I don't remember, because I was so upset by having to watch Tyson Fury sing. Anyway, just before the show started, we managed to get really good seats. We got in early, and we were not on the floor, but we were in the apex of the corner of the arena by the floor, about 4 rows back. And just before the dark match starts, which is the match of the show before it goes on to the televised bit, I could sense it was happening. I was like, I'm all dressed up. I need to do something. And I just turned around, stood up, and looked back across this whole section of the crowd, and just very slowly, Jesus-like, raised my arms above my head, very slow, ever so slowly. Now, maximum, as some people that know me well would say, maximum dick mode. And started the Viking clap, which, if you've seen the Icelandic football team made famous. And so, silence, nothing. Come back up again. Nothing. Still, right? Okay, keep going. By the 4th clap, I had about 6 people clapping along, joining in. Doubled. By the end of it, when it goes and picks up, the whole corner of that arena pretty much was all joining and go, and that was it. And that was great. That was lovely. Anyway, a couple of months ago, we bump into, we're at the podcast show in London, and we bump into these guys that do a show called The Gorilla Position.
Yes, I'm aware of that one.
And they run a lot of podcast watch-alongs. They've got their own coffee. It's quite a big. They're pretty much as close to being like an authorized WWE podcast over here.
Yeah.
So we just meet them. We're chatting to them. I have no idea who they are. Damien listens to them, loves them. And I'm just chatting about some of the stuff that we've done, showing them some of the videos and that kind of thing. And then the producer went, I was there. I saw that. And he'd been in the crowd. And then I've just made friends with another comedian in Edinburgh who called me over while I was out flyering, and he was flying, and he was like, I saw you in Cardiff. And he'd seen us again doing that same kind of thing. We went to Money in the Bank earlier this year as well.
Nice.
Which is a ladder match. And again, we had people come up that had seen us in other events and being around. And then brilliantly...
Do you go dressed as the champ?
As the champ, yeah, that's the whole thing. So I'm in the full event.
Nice.
But this weird thing, the psychological thing happens is like, when I walk around these events and places like Edinburgh, when I'm not in costume, I get really... I can understand now why rock stars have real psychological issues. Because you go from being, all this attention to just being blanked. But you just disappear. But we've done all these events like that. And... it's just this amazing thing of like we're getting this. What's the word I'm looking for? Like authenticity. It's like we're there where the fans are. We're doing what we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the coolest things that happened was the official Money in the Bank Facebook page. Somebody posted a picture of me, with the person that posted this going, does anybody know who this wrestler is? I've seen him at a few events now, but I've never actually seen him wrestle. I'm not sure if he's made it to top level WWE, but he's the best dressed. And I was like, yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you screenshotted that.
I did. And then I promptly blocked the person who was like the second comment, went, oh yeah, he does podcast. Oh. But then, yeah, that's kind of, so the line is crossed. It used to be when we did this, we'd be writing things together and I'd say to Damien, wouldn't it be funny if Nigel, the character, said this? And now what tends to happen is I say to Damien, I just said this. And that becomes the character. And then we led us to this weird thing where I ended up on BBC National Radio before the Gravy Wrestling and after the Gravy Wrestling as Nigel.
So who is Nigel?
So Nigel Franklin is the man who is the champ, right?
So he's the character who plays the character.
Well, this is a wormhole.
So you don't go around as you. You've created a character to play the character.
Yeah, and actually, what's happened sometimes in the podcast as well, we've messed around with it sometimes. So sometimes when the podcast at the credits at the end, I don't get a credit, but Nigel does. So Nigel Franklin is the champ. Yeah, the lines are blurry.
So when you go on BBC Radio, you're going on as Nigel, who is the champ.
Nigel Franklin.
Ant McGinley doesn't get a look in.
No.
He is the Dwayne Johnson to The Rock.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. So you sent me that link, and I was like, "Who the hell is Nigel?"
I mean, that kind of happened accidentally, but
that's a good idea, though. It's a good idea. It's another because if it goes wrong, your name's not in it.
Yeah, exactly. So
if anything bad happens,
nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. Do you want to see some pictures of me in gravy?
Yes.
I just want to pop this up. We can put these on the So these are some
World Gravy Wrestling
Yeah.
Championships.
So just open and just scroll through them. So
Will these be seen on the YouTube?
Yeah.
Cool.
So there we go.
Yeah,
Like
I am double clicking them. I wish.
and then just if you
Oh,
go
is
through it.
anything?
So
Oh,
that's,
there he is.
That's me just coming on to greet the adoring crowds. So
Audio
listen-
only listeners, you're really missing out on this episode.
Well, this is we're going to put this. We'll cut this for the audio bit. So that's me in the full outfit. Now that the hair, everyone said it wouldn't survive. Turns out that Gravy is quite a good conditioner. If you just want to keep scrolling through them and just see.
I thought you'd have like
comes
multiple of those wigs.
Well, no, this is the lack of foresight on my part. So that was the squaring off against each other. This is my favourite
Oh,
picture.
cheap shot below the belt.
He
Literally.
started it, so we did a
okay.
good few of those, and then we did box to box, which is
Love it.
and then
Go for a slam.
there was a couple of slams. There's a few. Actually, I still have.
That's a good shot. That's a good shot.
Oh, it's amazing, and the gravy as well. It gets everywhere. I can
I
tell
bet it
you.
does.
It is honestly, it's like in your eyes, in your ears.
Yeah, my toilet
Yeah.
smells amazing.
How did you get so much gravy?
They actually work on it for ages. Again, that's another of my favourites for the day. Just
Working hard.
I like to think in that picture. So for those of you who don't have access to the pictures now, or for whatever reason can't see them, if you're familiar with the scene in Apocalypse Now where Martin Sheen appears from the water, I like to think it's a little bit like that. It's kind of Rambo-esque.
It almost
as
looks
well.
like oil in certain shots with the light.
It does get quite lumpy as well. You can see. In
Oh,
certain
someone hasn't
parts.
made good gravy. It's got
Oh,
lumps
no,
in
they
it.
haven't mixed it properly.
The problem is you've got 2,000 litres, and actually what they have to do is
A ref. We got a ref.
Yeah, it was a terrible, thankless job. He stood there.
He
For
just
hours.
picks you up off the floor, does he?
So this is the point where the wig came off.
Oh.
So the wig came off. So it wasn't secured. I don't have enough
The
for it to
mask
hold on
is
to.
revealed.
Yeah, and then the
Was that the end of that?
my
That was the end of
opponent threw it around.
Oh.
And then this is a flying headbutt, which I can
Ooh.
still feel.
Oh.
So what happened was we had
He tripped. He fell.
Yeah.
we had 5 seconds left, and the guy in the PA system went 5 seconds, do something cool, and Jake Massey there from Lad Bible, who was my opponent, Jake the Snake, just suddenly did a flying headbutt, which I ate, and I can still feel. So I don't know if you've ever bruised a nipple.
Don't think so. No.
It's like bruised ribs, but up here, so that you keep thinking you're having a heart attack,
Every
which
time you
is a man
breathe.
of my age.
Oh,
is
look at that.
So that's the gravy wrestling. But the thing that I love about this was we'd actually created a podcast about this and then forgot it because we turned the material around so much.
He looks
and then
happy.
it
Look at how happy he's
became-
there.
Oh, my God.
It is.
I take it he won, did
No, I won.
Oh, you won,
Yeah,
okay.
So this is.
he? He doesn't look like you won.
That's because sometimes when you lose, you actually win. But on this occasion,
Okay.
he lost and I
He
won.
was just pleased to take part.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's
so
brilliant.
yeah, so I do feel
Good
quite,
game face. Good game
Thanks,
face.
man. And then this is the guy I eventually lost to in the next round, called Disco Dave, who.
Disco Dave.
But the worst thing I have about this is he's an accountant by day. He actually put me over the,
Oh, that's
the
you.
barriers, yeah, and a bunch of kids then started
So
laying into me.
the wig was no more for the rest of the tournament.
Oh no, I brought it back. I was
Okay.
like, there we go. And then this is me giving him a wedgie. Full on. Yeah. So all the dirty tricks, and I got right in there, and that picture probably has more questions over it.
You should. That's a put a caption. This.
There we go. That's how I up it went.
Cheeky.
I lifted him about 3 inches off the floor. So and I did have a change of clothes as well. So this is yeah.
Face.
Yeah, so the way this is the way you proceed in this is it's not just about your wrestling prowess; it's about your entertainment and your costume as well. That was quite.
You've
a
already
heavy
got the
ball.
costume.
Yeah.
Groin stomp.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Fighting from the ground. I like
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's more being beaten up on the ground. Is
Well, it looks like you're retaliating there.
Nah, he's just got me by the ankles and he's stamping on my ghoulies. Yeah.
So how many people were there? Looks busy.
Yeah, there's I mean, some 300 to 500 people, I guess. The place is absolutely rammed out. And
Where's
what's
it at?
amazing- So it's a place called the Rose and Crown. It's in Bacup, Rosendale.
No
so
idea what that
it's-
is.
So basically, sort of between Rochdale and Blackburn.
Not too
Right.
far for you to go then.
No,
Cool.
not too far at all. And
Were you aware of it beforehand? Do you?
vaguely, I had a vague thing. I mean, it's classed as what's brilliant about this is it's classed officially. It's in the Guinness Book of Records as the top 10 weirdest sports in the world. This is in
Right.
the top 10. And because I got through to the second round, or I got through down to the last 8, I'm technically in the top 10 athletes in the one of the top 10 weirdest sports. So
Obviously, great content for the podcast.
yeah, I'll take that. I'll
Yeah.
take that on.
That's awesome.
And then let me just put this, because this is one of my favourite videos, the Champ Mando one there.
Let me just
So, but
check.
just do this without the volume.
Yeah, I'll just check
for
that
it to
before I
use.
turn it on.
So this was one, again, this just shows you me what goes through getting ready to get into character. And a lot of the character is the outfit. And so I had this idea based on the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Commando, where he gets ready. And
I recognise this room.
yeah, so there we go. This is a different room. This is the digs we were in.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Love
took me
it.
ages to make those shoes.
What about the belt?
Oh, so we found someone that did that belt.
awesome. Good
We've
belt.
actually we've got a new one coming. Because we've kind of been
There's
ruined
also
by
a
the gravy.
cross between Rambo and Hot Shots.
Exactly. That's the inspiration there. It's quite a look. Yeah. And again, the thing was, we did this, the turnaround about this, again, just being in that creative space. We were doing all these shows. We were exhausted. Yeah. So we
Better Red than Dead.
yeah,
Like
that's
it.
the show. Shall I get the merchandise now?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So again,
So this is a new live show.
so no, that was the first live show that we did.
That was the first one, right?
So yeah, so a little present for you here.
Nice.
So, this is what. So I got this at the podcast show.
Good that. Yeah. I really like
so
that.
Spotify, previous
Oh, nice.
sponsors of Pods Up North.
Yes, which we also need to talk about.
Yeah, so they were doing this thing where they were giving tote bags of the show, and the best thing, one of my favourite things that's ever happened was coming back from one of the late shows on the bus in Edinburgh. I had this over my shoulder, and there was a couple of drunk people. I say 4 of them, and they must all be like in their late 50s. And they're on the bus, and this woman said, "Is that you on that bag? Yeah, are you a wrestler?" And then I just got in and I went, "Yeah, I am." I went into this giggly little thing, and then they had the photo with me, and it's just fun. It was
Yeah,
they're never gonna know. I was like, "Yeah, why not?" Anyway, so what have I brought with me? So first of all, here is this is the t-shirt.
That is the T-shirt.
That is the t-shirt. In fact, this is the very first t-shirt. But if you go onto the website wrestlingwiththechamp.com or gingerninja.live, we've got a whole store of shirts and different products as well. But this is my very first one, which is why I brought it along. But what I've got for you here is something we did for doing the live show. It's an actual physical product.
Oh wow.
So this is the book, and there's a second book coming on the way. But this is effectively the script we did from the very first show. We put it into book form, added some photographs, a couple of other little notes and that kind of thing, and we now have an actual physical product. And that
Wow.
one's for you. I can even
that's
sign
very-
it for
very
you as well.
kind of you. That's awesome. I'll definitely
Yeah.
read this.
And I've also put in there some stickers and some flyers and some other bits as well. So
So this is people can buy this on your website.
people can buy it on the website.
cool.
I actually we just did my very first autographed copy online, which is brilliant. Cost me more in postage than it did to print it, but there we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Really good.
but this is the thing that's happened through doing this, and partly this is a lot of Damien's very good at getting things done and very motivated, but also the fact that this is something we've created and it's just expanded.
It's your
in
baby,
ways
it's
that we've
growing.
we didn't imagine, and we're also in the early stages of doing like a full 23-minute video pilot. So
Oh, wow. Like a show.
yeah, somebody approached us with this idea, but they're less a creator and more like a camera person. But they've
Okay.
got
So they could facilitate it.
yeah, but they have a very good background, but they're a DOP rather than a director,
Right.
and they see it as very much like a Spinal Tap type thing.
Yes.
And whereas our approach has been very much like some of the stuff we looked at is all very sort of social media videos, very short form.
So this is a bit of a different challenge.
Yeah. So just like,
But that you could definitely do that. You could definitely
yeah. So it's just a case
Spinal Tap it.
just a case of writing it and seeing what
That's
comes up.
awesome.
So.
But probably like a YouTube thing that you'd put out there.
No, I mean the thing is, I think that's the way we approached it before. But again, this is with working with other people. He's come along and gone, no, let's do it properly and then pitch it to networks.
Wow.
So why not?
If you've got the opportunity,
Yeah.
go for it.
And I think that's one of the key things. So there's the core of us here in terms of me and Damien, but we work with some very talented people. So lots of guest voices that have come in and been brilliant.
Yes. So people who voice your opponents and stuff like that.
Yeah. And we've credited them all in the book, which is quite an interesting exercise when you do that. At the front of the book, we credit them all. And I think across the first 4 seasons, we had 57 different voices.
Wow.
Yeah, in terms of like, or people that have lent some kind of production ethic to it as well. I think that we also have adverts in the show as well. And we've just set up a Patreon, so our Patreon's gone live.
I saw that, yeah.
Which we kind of realised that in terms of like the download numbers and the way that works out, we just needed to get 3 Patreons and we would make more money than we would be making from the advertising.
How have you done it? Have you just gone? Have you got like different tiers? People can pay more money and get more stuff, or have you just got for one price for all?
So we have on the spot now.
It's like Dragon's Den. Do you know your numbers?
Do you want me to look it up?
Yeah. Why don't we go to the website and look it up? There we
yeah.
go. See. Let's. I mean, obviously this is just so I can promote it. Yeah.
So, is it
Wrestling with the champ.
With the champ. Oh. So I think it's just £5. $5.
$5.
There might be spaces needed in there, but there we go.
It should find it.
No matches.
No.
Did I even spell it right?
Well,
you
put spaces in.
Make spaces in it, and it
Yeah.
might find it.
Yes.
I think you spelt wrestling without an R.
That's not good, is it? You mean with
Keep going.
the
And again.
champ?
Oh, come on.
What?
Is it
You
not-
spelled it right there.
Did
Press.
I really? Wrestling with the.
Yeah, that's right. And then champ. Space champ.
I did that before.
And hit right. Yeah.
Hit enter anyway and see what happens.
Okay.
Oh. How's
Okay,
that?
so that's
That's interesting. Go put Wrestling with the Champ Patreon in Google and see what happens.
yeah. I'll go through our website and
Yeah, you
say
can go
that
through
way.
the website, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, is that just the website? And
Yeah,
then
you should
we
find
will-
it through. There are patrons there. There we go.
Ta-da.
Right, there we go.
Oh, so we can't see it unless we... okay.
Anyway, there we go. Never mind. So one of the things we're going to do on there is a lot of the podcasts. One of the things they'll tempt you over is early access to the podcast
Yes, you'll get it.
and
yeah.
hear it advert free.
Yes.
But one of the things we've done on every episode of our podcast is we'll have 2, sometimes 3 fake adverts, which have got better and better to the point now where you can't tell.
It would be to your detriment to not have them in.
Yeah, so people can tell. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a special Patreon episode. We've done a couple already, but we're going to do a special Patreon episode, which instead of being ad free,
Just adverts.
yeah, it's content free. It's just adverts.
Content free.
Yeah, which kind of fits in with the whole mindset of the champ. So yeah, so it's
That's
been
good.
an amazing journey.
It's just a way to self-fund and keep things ticking over and cover your costs and...
Yeah, and that's what we've done is like Damien's got a very good business brain as well, and very much from the early days we have like lots of boring things like spreadsheets and Gantt charts and things.
But you
that
need
we've
them.
done.
You need them.
And just to go
They're
like
the nuts and bolts.
what we spent on it, and so we can
Yeah.
budget it out. And so we managed to pull favors left, right, and center. We managed to do Edinburgh twice now without signing a kidney.
Yeah.
Although, to be honest, I wouldn't sell Damien's because he does drink quite a lot. So we. It just keeping us on track as well in terms of where we're at and what we've invested and who owes who what. But yeah, it's amazing to kind of go through this. And also, I think when I first came and met you, it was before I started this sort of things. I've done writing and those creative sides and the soundscapes with things like on
And
the
you're
left
doing the
side.
football.
On the left side, which we wrapped up during lockdown.
Yes.
But some of the people and some of the skills that we've brought over to this new project. But then that also led me into some of the voice acting work as well. So since we last met, I've now become, I've had my first paid voice acting work, my first paid articles, writing for other people. I've worked with some, and it's really nice to work on. I'm used to working on projects like with this one now. We're from the early doors. We'll have the idea. We'll bash out the script. We'll then get the different voices in, build the soundscape. Damien will do a first run at it, then I'll add the icing on the cake, as it were. But when you are contributing a voice for somebody else, you literally just do the lines and then it disappears and you don't see what happens. And so there's an amazing podcast which has just finished after 5 years called The Offensive. Did you listen to that one?
Rings a bell.
It's the one. It's like the thick of it but in football. It's like a football boardroom, and it's the.
Oh yes, I'm
it's
aware of it. I've not.
yeah.
No, I've not listened
So
to it. No.
it's the CEO, the director of football, and the communications director. So those are the three main characters, and it's all built around how horrible these people are to each other, and also some very creative swearing using footballers' names. And they did it. They've done 5 seasons, and they kind of did it in real time over the seasons. And as it went, it grew, and it had other people involved. Now, somewhere in possibly the start of the second season, I'd stumbled across it. It's a fictional Premier League team that they support. And at the time, I was doing it on the left side. So I did a special episode on them, highlighting it and going, this show's great, check it out, go listen to it. And then at the end of the season, they invited me to be a voice on their final episode of the season where they were facing relegation. So I was just very like one line, and it was like, I hear at Upton Park or the wherever West Ham are playing these days, where the game was going to be, just reporting on it, and that was the one section. Then they came back to me and said, the next season, they says, actually, we've got a budget now, and we've got a character we'd like you to do. And I was like, brilliant. And then they said, you might want to record this somewhere where there's nobody else about. I was like, okay. And
I can do that.
yeah, so the episode that I appear in is called A Man About a Dog. And I'm brought in as the first team coach. And so I've now, in podcast terms as well, being a wrestling champion, I've coached a Premier League team in the Champions League. Right? One of the things. Anyway, it's not the most auspicious start because of a rumour about this particular character. And I suppose the best way for me to sort of set this up and tell it succinctly is I recently joined a friend's office on an out day walking around where I live now. And so it was just around the corner from me. So I'll come join you. Went up in the hills, spent a few hours walking up, beautiful day. And so as you do on a walk, you sort of move around the team and you chat to different people. And what do you do? What do you do? And he said, oh yeah, I love podcasts, listen to this. And this guy listens to The Offensive. I went, oh, I was in that. He went, where are you? Who were you? Says, remember Dave, the dog shagger? That were me. So, yeah. But that was an interesting role to do. But then that led me on to do, they also did, I mean, Joel and Adam that do that show have done some incredible stuff. They did Jackie the Ripper as well, which is over 3 seasons, a modern flip on Jack the Ripper. My first line in that was, we can't find his knob, because I was the copper that found the victim. But yeah, it's just been, this has all happened because I started doing this and I started doing those different things. And they happened because I started doing a podcast. And it's just, and you know, when you go back to it, there's, in some ways, there's not been a plan in terms of like, it's been more organic than actually kind of going, this is going to happen. It's like, it's been more very much, I want to do this because this is exciting, this is cool, and oh, this is fun, or why not, I've never done that. And then that's led to this, and that's led to me meeting this person or working with this person, not in a nepotism way, but just aligning, I think. And yeah, and then the other things that I'm doing at the minute, just to throw that in there.
You've got a lot going on.
Yeah, so I'm currently making the official Manchester City podcast.
Wow.
And I've just been hosting the official Wolves podcast as well.
What's the Man City one called?
The official Man City podcast.
I think I've already subscribed to
that.
Yeah,
you know? So I'm not on that, but it's just, we've just done an interview with Rico Lewis. The next episode is going to be Jack Grealish. It's hosted by Rob Pollard, who's there in.
Obviously, you're a Manchester City fan, so
yeah. And
perfect.
Neda Manua, so I need him Manua. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But it's very different formats. And then I've been working. There's a new show coming from Wolves.
First one that comes up was Manchester United podcast. No.
Weirdly, the guy that's producing the Manchester United podcast has a company called Ant Podcasts. which I own the domain for, by the way. So if you want to,
Yes, I'm already subscribed to that. I'm already subscribed to that. Yeah. So what's going to be your involvement with that then?
With the Manchester City one? Oh, I'm the producer on it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've been down to Manchester. Honestly, this.
So you're in the studio like him, like basically in the studio.
So every now and then I'm in the studio, but mostly because they're not sure when they're going to get people. We've set them up to be self-sufficient,
right?
And they're doing it as a video first, and then I convert it into an audio podcast. So they have to sign off all the audio, and then I'll kind of go through it. And so sometimes I'll just like clean up the audio, take out noises.
Yeah.
Sometimes take out just the other noises going, yeah. But just make it a more clean listening experience. And then add in a little bit of soundscaping, like some highlights of different bits from their own rights and things like that. So yeah. So that's a project that we pitched for before we met. So we did the original demo
4 years ago.
Yeah, did the original demo just under 5 years ago. And it's taken this long for it to.
Well, it just shows you like podcasting is now finally starting to reach the top tier of all entertainment and media, and someone's gone. We should probably have a podcast by now.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think, I ever envisaged it to get into this stage. But also, I didn't think that podcasting would ultimately trigger a series of events that would lead to an intergalactic war.
Hey.
Play the
let's say full circle there.
Yeah, War of the Worlds music come in there. No, but actually that is happening. So the company VoiceWorks that I work with there, I know that people that they approached when I started doing work for them that weren't interested are now recognizing the power of it and what's coming on, and I'm seeing this across the board. And it's really funny when I meet somebody who, for the first time, they're like, "Oh yeah, podcasts is the new thing. They're really taking off." But here's the thing: is like the there's still significantly more people that have never listened to a podcast.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, than do, and it is growing and it is big and there's all these things, but it's still a tiny fraction when you compare it to not
TV
just other
or
media,
radio
or
yeah,
other things like that.
Yeah.
So it's still coming.
But it's got so much potential, though. It's a lot to be tapped into.
Yeah, but there is still this. We've gone through this phase of, and what's really interesting at the minute is there's a lot of companies that made cutbacks in the last year and a half, and some companies that have closed, some startups that have, just disappeared or whatever, and it's because people have speculated and going to make loads of money from this, and actually, some people do make money from it, and some people do very well, but a lot of people that just go in with belief and hope haven't necessarily converted that into finances.
Yeah. And
I think that there's a balance. So there's some incredible creative people out there who've done some amazing stuff that just hasn't been recognised or been discovered yet. I mean, there's so much out there.
It's like bands as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's still, and there's probably still more bands than there are podcasts in terms of all around that. I mean, I dare say podcasts are probably catching up now.
Yeah. There's also a lot of dead podcasts out there still there.
Yeah. But that's not. I mean, there's still some stuff out there that, the podcast is still very good, and I'm still glad that it's alive and you can discover it. And also, what happens is, you kind of think that you've got you're across it and you're on top of it, but then you'll just discover an entirely new genre of podcasts, and then the shows. And then since we've done, and we still haven't talked about it yet, but since we've done Pods Up North a couple of years ago, there's now other conventions that have launched that are purely based on one genre.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so you could have a true crime one or a
So there was a true crime conference, and then way before I started doing like bits with Jackie the Ripper and the Champ and those kind of things, I went to an audio drama conference in Birmingham. So this would have been February 2020. So just before I flew out to do Podfest in America and came back just for COVID, which was good.
Imagine if you'd been like a few weeks later.
I know, it's crazy.
Still be there now.
I just converted. No, they would have kicked me out. So I went to this. There was a lady who reached out to me about Pods Up North, and we chatted online. And I basically gave her a ticket to the event because she had the same birthday as me. I was like, it's a sign. So she came up, but because I knew she was doing a conference of her own, I was like, good to have this communication. So she came up to the conference and then was like, this is in November. And then I went down to her conference in Birmingham in February. Now, I wasn't expecting much from it for whatever reason, but I went down for the day. I got there and I was blown away. So not only did she have more people at this event than we had at our event, but it was this completely different genre, podcast I've never heard of. But also what was really interesting for me, which blew my mind, which I'm still struggling to get my head around now, you had like a trade fair there for all the podcasts. So the podcasters were able to have like a trade fair
Like a
for their
stall.
show, like a stall for their show.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
they could sell their merchandise, things like that.
That's really good.
Really clever, really interesting. But I was looking around, people that I thought were the podcasters were actually the fans that had come to the event. And so you had people coming in cosplay of characters in these podcasts.
Wow. So like the people come and see you as like the champ or
Exactly.
something like, or one of your opponents or something
Exactly.
like that.
Now, the thing is, it's like, whatever you think of cosplay, you kind of appreciate when it's like if somebody's coming as Darth Vader or a Stormtrooper or, Wolverine, whatever that is, because you're aware of that and it's a big thing. But when you suddenly come across this thing that you weren't even aware of, and then there's cosplayers, you're kind of going, but this is a huge thing that I wasn't aware of completely. What is this? It's like finding a new genre of music. And so there's this. There's such a huge, wide world of podcasting, and again, it comes back to this thing where I'm a big fan of it. Is the barrier to entry is so low, and there are so few hoops to go through. You don't need approval by anybody. So now, if you had an idea for a book, you don't need to bring it to a publisher, right? You can publish it yourself on Amazon. You can turn it into an audiobook yourself. You can share with somebody else, do some voices. I met this lady through Mike group who is in her 70s, and she does a podcast on her own. She does all the voices, all the characters, and she's on her 5th season of that, and she just does it, and it's amazing. No, it's just
cool.
But this is, again, how if you go back in a different timeline, in a different setup, this isn't there. And if that one lady can do it, this guy can do it, this group can do it, this family can do it.
Inspirational.
And so the more and more people that do it, the more, and I think we're going to be in this thing where we put things into pigeonholes to make it easier for us to organise. So this is true crime, and this is drama, and this is comedy, and this is sport, and this is news and current affairs. But there's also going to be all these other
This is
pigeons.
random.
Yeah, that we haven't
Uncategorized.
Yeah, I mean, look at some of the podcasts that have won awards recently. Like, have you heard? Is it Ben's? Not Bossy Cold. It was like the big one at the British Podcast a few years ago. It won like 6 podcast awards. Have you heard? And it was literally called like George's podcast. George the Poet. That was it. Have you heard George's podcast?
I'm aware of it. Not heard of it. Not heard. I've not
It
listened to it.
is amazing, right? And it's like, but again, it's like it's not something that you could pump out every week. It's a series of things, and one of my favorite episodes is about creativity, right? So he does one episode which is about creativity, and it's about an idea being a character. Like, you remember like the numbskulls? And it's like this idea trying to work its way through the system, the politics, and the brain to get there and to become a reality. And it's all done in rhyming prose. So he has that, and then one of the other episodes is about Grenfell and the Grenfell disaster. And you're like, how are you going to even do this? How are you even approach this? And it's one of the most powerful things that I've ever listened to, and it's unexpected. But again, it's like, George the Poet, very talented guy, just come into this podcast space, done something different, cleaned up.
Yeah, you get a lot of that. People are just like, it's another way for them to get out what potentially they wouldn't have had a medium for, or a way to get it out, but now they can just...
But at the end of the day, as much as I am a big advocate and a prophet and a salesman for podcasts, it is just another medium. It's just another way of putting your message
It's
out.
a bit more free, though, than, say, radio or TV or more traditional. There's a lot less limits and barriers and stuff like that, so you can be a bit more edgy or different than you would elsewhere.
I think you can still inadvertently bring a lot of your own barriers to it.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right.
Which I think, which is what gives people the courage or the sort of inclination to do it in the first place, who maybe wouldn't have had a way of getting their idea out.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a good facilitator for things like that.
But just because it's there doesn't mean, like, how many people do you know that have said, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book"?
Yeah.
And how many people do you know that have written a book?
Very few.
Yeah. So the different. So just because it's there doesn't mean people will
Yeah.
do it. But I will fight to the death for people's right to have access
Yeah,
to do something like
Absolutely. I mean, because I've been doing it around here a lot of time, I've helped people set up podcasts quite a few times, and I'm helping someone set up now. But I get a lot of people who I want to do a podcast, but they can't answer the question of why.
that.
Why do you want to do a podcast? What do you want to be about? Like, they just like the idea of it, but they haven't got an idea.
But then
I'm not saying that doesn't mean they shouldn't do it.
No,
You need to have a starting point.
So when I'm working with people, and I'm working with a couple of really interesting people at the minute, one of whom is a professor at a university, who Professor Rachel Julian, professor in peace studies at Leeds Beckett University, and it's about how communities are able to have non-violent protection in war zones, which is crazy. Like, we're still refining the idea and getting it down, but she's off to this big conference in Geneva soon, and she's going to be doing a lot of interviews there. But it's all about this basic idea of traditional peacekeeping is sending more soldiers to a war zone, and actually having more soldiers are good at fighting wars. They're not good at, at things not happening, because it's like that whole thing. If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so it's about the stories of people that have been in war zones that have found ways around without resorting to sort of having soldiers there to survive and to live and to have respect. And that's really interesting in terms of, what I do normally. I've done a lot of stuff about comedy and about sport, and now this is something that feels kind of quite worthy and can make a difference in people's lives. But this lady's a professor and doesn't know how to get this thing out there, and so I don't think there's anything about intelligence or even experience that is there. And when I'm working to develop a podcast with somebody, why is always a key question, because I'm trying to understand what they're doing and develop it. But at the same time, especially if you're working with somebody who's just coming to it for the first time, my inclination would be to go, if you've got the facility and the space and the time, is to go, okay, and just give them the space if you can, and just go, press that button to record,
Just start talking,
and just let it happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, because you don't know what's going to happen, right? They can record, and they'll come out, and if it's anything like when I did my first radio shows, was like, I came out and I thought I was that god. I thought I was the man. I had this thing nailed. And what I did wasn't very good, but that feeling was great. And that feeling then drove me to learn more, to do more, to rack it up.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably a long time before I got good.
Yeah. It's like most things,
but the
isn't
feeling
it?
was still there.
The experience and practice and
Yeah. But I think we have a kind of, especially as people now who are, we're in danger of becoming gatekeepers, and I think that's a really you've got to be aware of that responsibility, because the things that you say to people, because and it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got power, but because you've been doing this for a while, people will add weight to your words. And so I think we all have a responsibility when working with people, is to be careful how we phrase things. But I'm completely with you. Like, if I'm developing something with a business, I'm like, why?
Yeah. I just don't want people to waste time. Like, I want to tell them things that I learned the hard way, or advice I can give. Please don't do that. Instead, think about this. Why don't you try that and try this, and just try and streamline the whole thing to get to where they want to be sooner rather than later.
There's a brilliant quote, which is, experience is simply the name that wise men gave to their mistakes. Yeah. And I've made a lot of experience. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm completely with you on that, and that's
because you also do I don't know if you started the Pod Tips
Yes.
Facebook group. Did you start that one?
Yes. Yeah, and so it's kind of.
I really that's one of my favourite ones.
Oh yeah, well, it's relatively small compared to, I think we've got about 4,500 people in there, and that has come under now the banner of Podomedy, which is
Yes. Something else that you're doing now.
There's a new thing, yeah. So we're building a podcast,
So it's like a comedy-based podcast network.
comedy-based podcast network, and also it's going to be we have the facility to be a production house as well. So we've been going through the hoops and things that you have to with various companies like the BBC.
Have you got a website?
Yeah, podomedy.com if you want to go on there.
Let's have a look.
I do have a T-shirt for that, but that is in the wash because it's white. And yeah.
It's a good idea.
And the great thing about it as well is there's only one Podomedy. It's almost a Google whack. There is a Podomedy, which is a kind of a foot spa in Belgium.
Do you know what a Google whack is, Liam?
Is that when you only get one result on Google?
Which is very hard to get these days. I remember when Dave Gorman back in the day. You remember that?
Exactly. So yeah. So the idea is, it is kind of what we've realised is I've been doing this for years with people, is having conversations with people and saying, oh yeah, I'll help you scale up, set up, help you do this, help you do that. And it's all been done very much on an ad hoc basis. Some people, I've done it as a favour. Some people I've done a discount for. Some people I've charged for. And then I'm also sort of in that comedy podcast space as well now, and I work with a lot of these different people. And Damien does as well. And Damien's, again, been the driving force behind this. And the idea is that we're effectively creating almost like, I call it like a Masons of podcasting. So in terms of we're all coming together under one barrier. So you would still be, so for example, if we were doing it with you, you still have complete copyright and control over what you do. But rather than just you being one podcaster shouting into the wind, you're then part of a group of us. So myself and Tech and whoever else we brought on. So we will then carry promotions and cross-promotion adverts for what you're doing, potentially some crossover for guest stuff, all within the one barrier and one umbrella. And then we also, as a collective, then we go forward and we negotiate for sponsors for the whole thing rather than for the individual shows. That's potential one avenue on the further down the line.
Yep.
The other one is then we start putting live shows on, or we have a stage at Edinburgh, or we do something like this, and then we also work together. So instead of just having this one to help you get set up at the beginning, we have regular check-ins, and we'll look at where are you struggling, what are you not good at. And
so it's not just for new people. So you could amalgamate established podcasts as well.
So actually, what we're looking for with this is rather than producing podcasts. So a lot of my day-to-day work is the production and working with people like that. It's more on the development side of things. So people that already have their podcast, what are their pain points, what they're struggling with, where can we do it? And what we found, especially with a lot of comedians, is they've done a podcast because they feel like they have to have a podcast, but they're not really sure what they're doing. Yeah. Or they've been doing a podcast and it has not been picked up, or they've done a podcast and they stopped doing it because it wasn't getting 15 million listens. And so the idea is okay, so what can we do with that? Can we maybe, and so eventually, this might become an app. It might become like the equivalent of Dave, in terms of where it comes, like the home of, they put themselves as the home of comedy. Dave want to buy us, fine. We haven't officially launched yet, but we'll be up for that. And so the idea is that we'll have regular sort of check-ins, developments with each podcast that's in there, and work with them as well, and also utilising their ability. So it's more like a cooperative, really, is what we're looking towards.
It's a great idea.
And so we're approaching it as a thing where we're not expecting to make loads of money from this, at least in the first year. But the idea is together we're stronger. That's
so will the money mainly be raised from advertising?
Potentially.
Right, yeah.
But that's in terms of, it could be from events and live shows as well.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we, what haven't you got? And then hopefully we've got that. If we don't have those skills within the network, we've got somebody with those skills as well.
Right.
So we bring them together. So we're starting off that way, and we'll see what happens. So we're hoping to announce our first cohort of founders, if you will, on World Podcast Day at the end of September when we launch. So if things are in place, and at the minute we're just looking around, and that was one of the things I was doing at Edinburgh, was actually going and and looking not just as a fan, but also somebody to go.
Soliciting some business.
Yeah, and just seeing what we could do with people, and also speaking to them. And
So is Damien involved in that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So this is so he again he's more of the
business side of it.
well, no, it's not. It's not even that. It's because Damien has 2 small kids, and I know you're a recent dad as well.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is there's 2 things that happen to people when they become parents, right? They have less sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Less sleep and more worry, but also they become incredibly efficient, right? Because everything is put into like 20-minute windows.
You want to work in small amounts of time. You got to get stuff done.
And so, whereas I'd be like, yeah, I've had this idea for a kid's book. Now, since I told Damien I've had this idea for a kid's book, he's written and published 2 kids' books. And I'm still kind of going,
He's not messing around.
what am I going to call the little girl? And
he goes, the end.
Yeah. So he's got like, by the time mine comes out, he's going to have like a whole Mr. Men, sort of, the whole 36 books in the series, whatever. But that's it's a nice dynamic that we're with. So that's very much his one of the things that he brings to the table. What I bring is in terms of like the actual connection that I've got with a lot of people that we're working with, because the people that we're talking to about bringing on board are people that I've helped launch sometimes 1 or 2 different podcasts previously, that I've guested with, that they've been voices on other projects that I've done, that I've been and supported and been and seen their comedy and those kind of things. So it's
it could be a predominantly podcast as well.
Potentially, although that's getting a bit meta. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. I mean, what might happen with that is that Predominantly would possibly, if there was a Predominantly podcast, it would be like a highlights.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Bring
That's
that
what I was
in.
thinking.
But we'll see what happens with that. But it's this is a new thing. This is growing. This is exciting, and yeah.
So if anyone's got a comedy podcast or comedians are looking to have a somewhere,
get in touch
home.
with us. Yeah, we're on Instagram at Predominantly Network as well. I think we're on Twitter, although I can't quite remember.
Have you heard of Eddie Hurst? Comedian Eddie Hurst.
Eddie Hurst. No, tell me more.
Right. He started. Well, he was on here years ago, not around at the same time you were first on here. But he's a stand-up comedian.
Right. There you go.
But he also does. Where is it?
This is why I have my notebook.
He's also started acting out. I'm gonna have to find this first before I butcher it.
Not the cricket player.
No.
I think it's this, isn't it?
EDY.
That's him.
That's him.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sure he's based in Manchester as well.
All right.
Where is it? He did has it mentioned his podcast on there?
It just sent me to mailing list.
EDY.
Podcast War of the Worlds.
That's the one.
Oh, nice.
So let me just find the
podcast version of Jeff Wayne's. Now, there's some synchronicity because we've been working to some ambitious projects with the champ. So one is I want to do a panto Italian in rhyming prose, but also I wanted to do a wrestling version of the War of the Worlds. But it would be the War of the different wrestling. And I mean, I'm a big fan of what I remember getting the Jeff Wayne album when I was a kid, and it blew my mind. And then I saw the live show, and it was only when I saw the live show that I realized like the subtext of it in terms of you have a war between the band and the orchestra all the way through it. And not being a musician, I hadn't clocked that.
Yeah.
And to see it live, especially when I saw it in Brighton when they did the first series of live shows. And so I think they had like a 55-piece orchestra and like 19 people in the band. And it was just... Loved it.
So he stopped about 3 months ago, but he's season 2, chapter 10.
Right, I'll listen to that.
So, but it's not really my cup of tea. But I had him on, and he was a funny guy. But I just thought this is the kind of when I saw, I was being meaning to mention to you. I thought I might as well just wait until you hear. But it seemed like he put a lot of effort into it, and there's a lot of production to it, and he's a funny guy. So I thought, it could work.
Absolutely. I'm very interested to look at that. Yeah. So what we're looking to do is just bring. Because one of the issues with podcasting is really at the end of the day is because the price that we pay for this access that we have to it is we effectively giving away everything we've got for free. Yeah. And although there's lots of people out there that will tell you how to make money, it's very difficult to make money from podcasting.
It's a long game.
And even then, there's no guarantee that you're going to make money from it as well.
You should always be doing it for the love of it initially, at the root of it.
Yeah. So one of the things I teach when I'm working with people is let's try and find a way to do this podcast that doesn't really change what you're doing already. The ideal situation is you just add in 20 minutes on to what you already do. So say, for example, like you were already meeting people like me. I was like, well, why not set it up so that you can have a chat with them and you record that conversation because you're going to go and see them or do whatever this is and just arrange to have a chat with them and record that. So you're going to go and see me anyway. Let's do that. And then at least in that initial phase before you come down and invest in the studio and all the time and commitments and everything that comes with that. But the fact is that these platforms like Spotify, as great as they are in terms of what they provide and what they've brought it to, is every time somebody listens to one of my podcasts, of which there are more. In fact, there are more people have listened to my podcasts than have ever lived. It's a fact. When you no, on a serious note, do you use Podchaser?
Yeah.
If you go my profile on Podchaser,
I remember when I registered it, I looked at your profile. And I was like, okay, so I kind of got an idea what to do.
But I think on there, and it's not got everything. It's not got every podcast I've ever been on.
It's got the Football Daily on that, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's got loads of stuff on there. But I think it's like if you listen, if it does a time thing of how many, like when you play Grand Theft Auto, it tells you how many hours
you've
been driving your
for.
car. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think if you wanted to listen to every podcast that I've ever been on, it's like, I don't know, 3 years or something now, just constantly. Yeah, so every time somebody listens to one of my podcasts now I put a lot of effort and time and energy into what I do. And the people that I work with do that as well. And a lot of it is hustling. Being completely honest, like we managed to achieve some amazing things because built up a reputation that people will say yes to me now when I ask them for things. And they've been very generous with their time. And so a lot of people have done it for favours. A lot of people have done it for heavily discounted rates for what they're doing. And even then, I'm not necessarily making the money back from it. It might just be here and there, sort of, these things are covering it. And my other work allows me to do these things. But when it goes on Spotify and somebody listens on Spotify, effectively, very small, Spotify are making money from that. Yeah. Because when somebody's listening to my podcast, they're not having to pay Taylor Swift 3p or 0.0003p.
Yeah.
Right. But the person that's listening they're either benefiting from the adverts that are going to that person or they're paying a premium subscription. So on a very small scale and very small scales, they're making money. And so it is skewed that way. So it's a double-edged sword in that way. Like podcasting has allowed these things to get out there, but the genie is out of the bottle in a lot of them. And so you need to have, as great as your idea might be, as creative as you might be, you need to have a real business sense now if you're going to make money from it. Now, you might stumble across it, it might happen. But one thing that has changed for me definitely in the last 5 years is my approach to advertising and marketing. And funnily enough, you picked up on when we looked at all the little stuff we had on our Instagram for the champ. There's so much content there from just the two of us, right? And that's because my belief now is you need to spend more time promoting your podcast than you do making it. Now, that's not to say, don't spend time making your podcast, right? But hear me when I say this. If it's taking you an hour to make your podcast, spend 2 hours promoting it. Right? Yeah. A very simple rule of thumb. Yeah. If it's taking you a week to make it, spend 2 weeks to promote it.
I think a lot of people think it's like, it's out, I've promoted it, done.
I mean, I was exactly the same. I remember one of there's a guy, Jason over in America he runs Monkey Poo Studios, and they do 7 Days a Geek podcast. And he literally, he was, for years, he like has a normal day job, has a load of kids, but he was basically doing a different podcast each day. And he runs his own thing every October where he does like a 24-hour podcast festival with podcasts from all over the world. But he was putting an episode every single day. And so I really sort of gelled with this guy when I met him. And he got me on as a guest on his show and give me all these quick fire questions. It's about 5 years ago. And he says to me, "What's your definition of success? You know, when it comes to podcasting, what's your definition of success?" And I was like, honestly, most of the time it's press and publish. Yeah. And you know, that holds true. That holds true because the thing is, it's like you've done it, you've created something and it's there. Now, I'm all for that. That's great. But if you want to go, if you seriously want to make an impression in this, if you want to get what you're doing out in front of more people listening to it, you need to work even harder on that side of things. And you know, I'm talking to you here after a crazy month.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
I've had a crazy month. I mean, if
you had COVID as well.
Yeah, so I did Edinburgh, then I had COVID, then I did wrestling in the gravy. From that, we ended up on. I was quoted on CNN.
Yes,
as myself.
Yes,
I was on 5 Live as the character. We were on. There was video footage of me used by. Well, Lad Bible have just put something out today. The Metro, the Mail Online, Reuters picked it up, went everywhere. So that T-shirt that I showed you before, that Wrestling with the Champ logo, was seen around the world. We went to, I think we went #1 in wrestling podcasts in Sweden, which is a different story. And it's all these things happen, and yet, you know, I've not driven here in a Ferrari. I've not, you know, I've not had people sort of like brought my chef with me so I can nip out and have a deconstructed pot noodle. It's, you know, there's all this work is here, and I don't necessarily have, like, if again, this is the thing of like, I've got nothing to feed my kids with from it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm able to do a lot of what I'm doing because I don't have those commitments and those responsibilities, and I'm doing that. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that with those things.
No, but you also do other things which allow you to do that as well.
Yes, yeah. So it's a very complicated thing. And so generally, I'm really, like anything in life, somebody says, do this and you make loads of money, right? Or buy this and you'll do this. Not all of them are scam, but just question what they're doing. And it may have worked for them, but that's no guarantee that it's going to work for you. So listen to people, take those lessons from it. And it's exciting. It's a great thing to do. But I'd say, you know, be inspired by people. Absolutely be inspired by people. But just recognize that what they've done maybe worked for them. It's not necessarily the right thing for you.
Or think about how hard they've had to work to get it to where it is.
Yeah, and you don't see that because people...
You just see the end result. You see the end product.
Well, here's the thing as well. Like, people... Like, especially within podcasting, right? All this thing that you go into these groups, you go into these YouTube channels, all these people that talk about it, and they say, "Oh, this is what I do. This is what I made, making this." Certain people, like, there's a pod. I don't know if you saw this recently. A podcast was floated. It was put up for sale for $5.5 million, and it didn't say what the podcast was, but Pod News worked out it was probably John Lee Dumas. Entrepreneur on Fire,
right?
Which is really interesting because that podcast is a lot of him. So how are they selling it
without him?
Without him, yeah, exactly. So you know, there is all this money out there, but then people are very, very defensive and very private about it. It's only recently the Dave from the School of Podcasting, he started doing it. There's
Dave Jackson.
Dave Jackson, great guy.
Yeah,
he was over here at the Pod Show. I met him both as me and as the champ, and. He started doing a thing where he's actually openly going, "Here's my stats. Here's my stats from the show. Here's what is." I'm just kind of going, "I'm not pretending. This is what I'm doing." And like some days, like he gets 50 people listen to his show.
Yeah.
And he's been running for like 12, 13 years with this podcast. So much knowledge, so much experience, so much wisdom, so many great connections, and yet, you know, and I think we've become obsessed in terms of like, it's almost like vanity metrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should only really compare to yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thinking about when you get into that level of detail, it's like stats. Don't compare yourself to somebody who's way further down the journey because it's not a fair comparison.
But also the thing is, if your driving motivation is the stats, right? If your driving motivation, say it's our podcast together, right? And we go, right, we had 100 downloads, right? What's our next thing? Right, let's get 200 downloads. We hit 200 downloads. What's our next thing? 500 downloads, right? And you're just stuck in this loop. Then it's all about the downloads, right? And you're not. It's not about
the content.
And why you're doing it, what you came into it, or why you. And I think that's important. Now that might be important as well.
The stats should be a byproduct of your creativity. if you're doing it. If
Yeah.
you're putting your heart and soul into it, like you say, spending the time not just creating it but promoting it as well.
But
Like
then-
stats
but then
go hand in hand.
Here's the other thing as well. So much of the stats in podcasting, people don't realize this, is based around, especially when it comes to advertising revenue, that first sort of fortnight, that first month window, right? That's what
30
it's based around.
days.
But here's the thing, right? People are fucking busy. People have shit
Mm.
going on, right? And it's like, it's not like it used to be. People have the ability and the facility to listen to it later.
Oh, of
Right.
course, yeah.
And it's kind of like, and it even happens now in a day-to-day life. How many times have you sent somebody in your family or a friend like a voice note or a text message, and they haven't looked at it for 3 days?
You're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Am I not important enough?
Yeah, but it's like,
It's busy.
people have got stuff going on,
Yeah.
and they'll come around and they'll listen to it, and they go, "Oh, sorry, I missed that dude," whatever. And so you have no right. You have absolutely no right for anybody to listen. You know, you have the right to go and do it, but there's no right. You don't have no.
You can't demand that people listen to it.
No, and so it's a real privilege, and I think this is one of the things that I really got a rediscovered inspiration from doing the live show, because those people have come out and you see what it means. People are actually stopping doing anything for 45 minutes plus the time it takes them to get there and whatever
Yeah.
to sit and watch your show, and there's a certain arrogance that comes with that. Say, sit here and watch me and do what I'm going to
That's
do.
how good
and,
I am.
and pay me money, right? And actually, you know what? It's so nice to meet these people and get that feedback and engage with them. And sometimes the feedback isn't quite what you'd want to hear, but it's all really valuable. And it gives you that appreciation for it as well. And actually, so the other thing that happens if you get down that listener number and you start obsessing about that is you get that 100 listeners. You go, right, what's next? 200, right? You forget about that first 100 listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all becomes about the next, and absolutely don't, because those are your people.
Mm.
Those first 100 people.
Make
that
sure
come
those
to you-
first 100 stick around.
Exactly. Right. That's the keep what you've got.
Yeah.
You know, keep those people that are going in. So that's my high horse.
You can't really. There's no right or wrong way, really. It's just general. It's just like you're saying. We're just telling what we've learned from experience. What worked for us, what didn't work for us. Might work for you, might not.
Yeah, and
That's all you can do.
it's going to be completely different for me, for you, for anybody watching, listening to this now as well. For Eddie, that we're just looking at his podcast as well. Everybody has a different journey, and so really, you know, the best thing I can say is to do it. Just do something,
because
know?
you can't really improve what you don't start.
Yeah.
So a lot of people I've spoke to is the fear of that hitting publish and like, my voice is going to be out there. What if no one listens?
Yeah.
No, and I always say when someone says that, what if no one listens? Nobody will be listening. When you start, nobody's listening. Just go from there.
One reason I would say to maybe not press start, to not press publish, is it's now starting to dawn on me just how much of my voice is out there, right? Which, especially as we move into this,
You're going to be target one of those AI things.
exactly, exactly.
They're going to get you saying some weird shit.
Mate, although
Not that you already do
yeah.
yourself.
So we have actually launched a couple of episodes. We I don't know if we're going to pick it up again, but me and Damien did a podcast called Funny AI.
Yes, I saw you advertise that. Yeah.
And so the basic idea of that was we'd ask each other a question and then ask AI the question and see which was funnier in terms of the answer that came up with that. We've only done a couple of episodes of it, but the more we've done it, the more AI has gone into it. So we've had, first of all, the answers were AI, and then the voice that came back. First episode, we had a voice actor do it. Then the second episode, we used AI voice.
Yeah.
in
Is there
it.
any copyright infringement on that?
Yeah. There is not on the voice. This is it depends what you're using. The problem with it is
Like
it's such a
ChatGPT.
new- So ChatGPT is, so here's the really interesting thing. If you get ChatGPT to generate something, well, let's not even specify the ChatGPT. If you get an AI to generate something, the question mark is has the AI, therefore the person who's programmed the AI and owns it, have they generated it, or have you by putting your command in? So that's the issue there. That's not been tested
the
because it's
grey
so
area.
new. But some things now, especially when it comes to music, they will have this on there. So there are lots of them out there where you can just put an introduction. You go, please do this, please do this. Actually, we've got some really nice AI artwork I can show you. If you go back to the Instagram.
Is it recent or is it like
Yeah,
a few
just
months
scroll up,
old AI artwork?
Scroll up. A bit more. There we go. So these two. So these are both.
Also, AI drew those, created those.
Yeah,
Oh, the hands are a bit dodgy.
yeah. The hands are fucking
So
weird.
which
dodgy.
AI specifically drew this?
So this was using, I think it was the Bing, which was using DALL-E. The
Is this
latest
free?
version of it. Yeah, as long as you're not using it for commercial purposes. So we're not selling this.
Right. Okay.
But then what I really like is the bloody stick and the whiskey on the right hand side there. So that was one of our episodes.
That's good.
And it's wonderful. And actually, what's happened here is
That's really good.
yeah. So we have this thing where there's this fear of AI. Right?
There's a definite fear of
There's
AI.
an absolute
It has
fear of
been
an-
for years, to be
Yeah.
honest. First, it was machines, which is technically
Yeah.
AI, and then
And so my worry was that there's so much of my voice out there is that if anybody wants to access my online banking or my telephone banking or create a Terminator, they could use my voice to do
Yes,
it.
they
They just
could.
find it. But the fear about AI is like kind of going, oh, it's gonna stop jobs, it's gonna all these things. But what I see it as being, it's an accelerator.
Mm.
And so two things that happened with the AI art when I started experimenting, I drove Damien mad, right? I mentioned earlier about how like he's got 2 kids and limited time. I was sending him about 500 images a day, right? Because I got, for about a month, I swear to God, I just got, because I learned there's like a formula to write
Right.
in what you want. And we got so many great images and so many awful images as well, but we're getting close to it. And what happened was it gave me inspiration from, in fact, Primark there. If you click on the Primark, I think that's one of our adverts. We can play it with the audio as well. I think this is an AI advert. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Hang on.
I think the microphone is down there.
Yeah, I'm just.
Flakier than a vicar's scalp, you'll love our pies. Nicely priced pies at stores nationwide and a high number of outlets around the Barrie area. No judgment.
Primark, yeah! Primark!
Why have we got a pirate mascot? Pie Mark. Because if there's no Pie Mark, it's just Greg. See, that's better than the pirate's contribution. Call my agent.
That
Shop
voice,
the latest pies at Pie Mark. Hot pies, cold pies.
that voice is AI.
Wow. How do you do that then? How does this work?
Well, we wrote the script, but what happened was, I was talking about being inspired.
Yeah.
I'd gone to a gig, came out of the gig and saw the Primark sign and just went, Primark, right? And then we
Primark,
wrote the
love
script, and that's one of the adverts on the show that we have. And so you can take a voice, you can clone a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's stuff you can do now where. My friend just put a thing up recently where it's him speaking in Italian. So this is but he doesn't speak Italian. So it's video footage of him
scary.
talking, runs it through a translator, and then runs a thing over his mouth. So it looks, and it uses his voice, his tone of voice, to speak Italian. Now, my thought with that is, rather than be, yes, it is scary, but I've instantly gone, we could do a back catalogue in different languages.
Yes, you could
Yeah,
transcribe
we can go
all
through,
of them.
not
yeah.
transcribe,
Well,
but
not
actually,
transcribe, yeah.
but again, the thing is, it's not being dubbed; it's in the original voice of the person that we've got. We've still got the
So
files.
as if you could speak those languages.
Exactly, and that's
In Mandarin.
I mean, I could still ni hao ma, what I ni, wa shi wan ni, which is hello, how are you? I love you. I really like you. I used to be able to know. I'm drunk. Take me home, but I can't remember that one.
Is that AI as well? That one?
So this one's AI too as well. So so the brilliant thing about this was I started experimenting with it.
Oh.
All right,
Oh, hang on.
okay,
Where's the microphone gone?
down here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just sit there.
For Chris.
Right. So the thing with the AI here, so as you can see, there's different things, and I gave it the style, so I'm experimenting around it. So
Yes,
this
I was wondering, well, what are you telling it? What things are you saying?
so you're putting a so on this one, for example, I would have said ginger-haired, long curly ginger-haired wrestler, right? And then sat on a pile of money, right? That's literally what I go. And then in a graphic art style, in a graphic novel style. Those are the prompts to give it. You can even go down to the different artists that you got in the style of it's John Romero who did Kick-Ass and those kind of things, or the Marvel artists and those kind of things. Now, one of the things that happened when I was starting to do this is some of these images popped up, and some of the stuff that we've done visually is very powerful. So in Night of the Ninja, which was last year's Halloween episode, which is where the champ is fighting Voodoo, who's a real wrestler. This is what I love about it. And he's come over into the podcast universe. So fighting a real wrestler. And then there's zombies, right? So there's a scene where the champ gets back to his Picanto. And he has to fight off the zombies to get to the Picanto. And visually, so I just put this scene in graphic novel, and the picture came out. It was amazing. And then I started to put other things in. Now, there's some limits with it, especially at the stage now where you can't lock specific things in. So, for example, like some of these images that we got now, like this wrestler here, this graphic novel on the Blood is Thicker Than Whiskey, we have that image, but then I can't hold that face to the next image. So if I give the same prompt, it's going to come out slightly different. Now, the advantage of that is sometimes it would, from the same prompt, it would put me in gold hot pants or gold tights. But then other times it would just add in, red wristbands. And so that was one of the things that I went, that's really cool. We should have that in the costume. We never thought about having red wristbands, right? These things that happen from it. But we started to realize that actually you can't. So we were looking into the copyright. Could we generate a whole graphic novel using the AI as a basis? Not quite. But what we could do, what we could do is we could get a really fucking good mood board that we then give to an artist and we say, here's the images, something like this. Can you do that?
Because artists would love. You've got definitive inspiration there for them to work from. Whereas a lot of people, sometimes people come with like a vague idea and they kind of know what they want, but they can't verbalize it. But you've asked AI, sort of giving you a really good draft.
Yeah, and also in terms of like when you go back to the fact that there's just two of us, we're working around, just other jobs and things like that to produce what we want. It then gives us the opportunity where to try, because we do work with the real people and other voices, and we've been doing that for years. But we don't want to take the piss. We're very aware that, and we have a list of these people, and when we can, we've gone back to them and we've paid them to come and do something. But we're also like, even then, we're paying them below market rates for what they're doing. They're helping us out. But one, we want to keep things interesting, working with other people, but also we want to be respectful. Sometimes we hit this wall, time, those kinds of things. We can't find the right voice. We can use the AI, and we've tried that. Now, that's Damien through his job is really pushing the envelope on that and do some really interesting things with that as well. And so I see it very much as an exciting thing. I think there are absolute limited, like we've seen in terms of the fingers and the hands is something that should also legs as well. Like wrestling positions, there's some really, it's like watching The Thing, right? When it comes out, there's limbs coming out from all sorts of weird places. But it's enabled us to do stuff, and it gives us a springboard.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the episodes that we're doing later this season is, one of the episodes that we're definitely doing was written by ChatGPT.
All right.
And that's the basis for our episode. So I said to ChatGPT, and obviously it's got no awareness because of its limitations of who the character is and what's there. So you've got to get it all in the prompt. So it says, here's the characters, here's the thing. Write a funny Indiana Jones style adventure, but with Monty Python humor, right? Of a wrestling adventure, right? And it gave us rather than a full script, it gave us a 4-act with a prologue and an epilogue.
Wow.
Structure for a story, right? And it's about the champ and Damien, and they hear about this legendary golden belt, and so then they go on these this trip to some exotic locations trying to find it. Then they find the belt, but to get the belt, it's protected by this opponent that the champ has to defeat to get it. And then when he defeats him and gets the belt, he realizes he didn't need the belt all along because he had it in him. Right? And then at the end, he retires from wrestling and becomes a motivational speaker with Damien as his manager. Now, this was all written in 30 seconds by the AI. Now,
that's awesome.
And so we're using that as a structure. So we're still working on it. Like we potentially there's
great. Yeah, it's good.
There's a few different ways we can do this. Also, we have an idea for Champ GPT, which is where he'll do his own version of AI as well.
Yes.
But that's a bit more Space 2001, Space Odyssey 2001 in terms of how that works out. But yeah, it's a really exciting tool that comes in with that, and also like other things in AI. Have you used Adobe Audio Enhancer?
Is that the one that's it's a website?
So yeah, so you basically you can set up a free Adobe account.
Yes, I have.
If you already have anything.
Yeah.
And basically what it'll do is it'll take the audio that you've recorded and it will clean it up. Now, it's still in the beta phase. It's still working through.
I think you can work up to an hour chunks.
Yeah. You can also now, but it'll do it in one block rather than specific sections. But it will clean up the audio, stop mic bleed, all those kind of things. It's a bit brutal in how it does it because it's so powerful. Because there's been times when anybody that doesn't work with audio, when you look at a waveform, you can see the peaks and troughs when people talk. You can also see like a spectrographic view, which is like colors and warmth, a bit like how the predator sees.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes when you go, oh, that's a quiet bit, you can see the breath and you can see these other things. Now, even on the spectrographic things, I've looked at that and gone, there's nothing there. And then it's run through this processor and it's pulled up the audio from
sure
the
that
other
there was
person.
something there.
Yeah, which is amazing because, like, say, for example, you've got some old footage of something you got never recorded. Put it through this and you'll be amazed what you can pull out.
Sometimes when you get like a loud talker talking to a quiet talker, there's a lot of disparity there that just brings it back to...
I mean, it'll work out.
Like you said, big, loud background noise, gone.
Yeah. The other thing that's making a big difference is, do you know about like 32-bit float?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that basically means is when you hear audio that distorts, it's because the processing is in a very narrow band, and traditionally most things like CDs is on 16-bit, and now 32-bit float, it basically means you could hear like an ant fart and also a nuclear bomb go off, and you would hear them both without having to change the levels for the recording.
Yeah. It's a game changer.
Yeah, so these things are happening. There's great bits of equipment that are out as well, like the new Rode mics are very exciting, which use that 32-bit thing. The Nemono, have you seen that set up?
Yeah.
And the great thing about the Nemono as well is it adds spatial recording on. So you put in the central box, and that will record the audio without having to need special headphones.
Yeah.
If you walk around while you're doing it, it will do the sound as if you're walking around, when you're listening to it, as if that person's walking around you, which gives, especially from a creative point of view, if you want to do like recreate a scene of like a band on a road trip. Yeah. So you suddenly like, you've got somebody in the back, somebody in the front, you could just by positioning the actors in that place.
Or things like for storytelling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's all these
or
different
like a bar scene where there's like something in the front, some in the background, foreground.
Somebody drops a thing over there. Now you can do this manually, but by moving around things, it takes ages to do that. But this just means it can be done in real time, which adds a whole new element. So there's all these things that are coming out. Those two bits of equipment that we just mentioned are very expensive. It's like £300 for the Rode mics, $2,000 for the Nemono. Yeah, I still would spend money on them, which again is another reason why I don't have kids. Sorry, Jenny, you can't
spare cash.
Yeah,
no,
you can't eat tonight. No.
Daddy needs to record a podcast.
Yeah, but if we kill the cat, we can feed the dogs for a week. So. There's that happening, but there's so many free tools out there that are enabling things to happen, and once people are aware of them and have these things, it just means that now suddenly you can go from what you were doing to taking it to the next level. And one thing I just put in the pod tips group the other day was both on Instagram and Facebook, obviously the same owners, but they've changed the
I saw you mentioned that. I didn't have time to
the
respond,
quality of the voice notes.
So in Facebook Messenger,
Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger now.
So they've upgraded the audio quality.
It's ridiculous. It's better than WhatsApp.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what they've done, but like my phone microphone's battered. But I was like, I can't believe how clear that sounds. It sounds like I'm literally in the room with the person, and I was like, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
This is
simplifies things.
Yeah.
I think. Like used to be like 5-10 years ago, if you want to do a podcast and set it up, you had to be a really audiophile, know about all the equipment and all the settings, and it's gradually getting more as it becomes more mainstream. Everything's getting simplified and equipment's coming out to make things easier. So if someone who knows nothing could just plug in and play and start talking.
Yeah,
which is ultimately that's going to be a good thing.
But then that was the thing is like you go back 10 years ago and trying to get a microphone that plugged in via USB, you couldn't find a decent one that did that. Yeah. And
now you get microphones that are XLR and USB, and you can put a microphone and you can plug headphones in and everything.
Yeah, and then you've got specific kit like the Rodecaster Pro and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, all in one box that does everything.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily need all that.
No, Especially if you're just a solo podcast talking to yourself. You just need a mic, plug it to a laptop, you're away.
And you don't need a studio like that. I know podcasts that have won awards that are just made using pillow forts. You know, like you take all the cushions off the couch and they just climb under the table and put them up. That's how they do it.
So, Pods Up North.
Yes.
So this is what's going on with that.
So Pods Up North.
So for anyone who doesn't know what it is in the first place.
So Pods Up North was, and when I first came on and spoke to you, it was just before I was about to do that.
Yeah.
It was an idea that we had to put on an event about podcasting outside of London, which was all inclusive, and it wasn't just an industry show. It was about the creators, about the people that were making it, and we kind of had no idea what we were doing. But in 3 months, we went from let's do this. We got offered a venue. And 3 months later, we put on an event with over 100 delegates, 30 speakers, 20 volunteers. Headline sponsors were Spotify.
You announced that on the show.
I did announce that on the show.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember that.
Yeah, and you kind of went, holy fuck.
I was like, whoa.
And it was brilliant. It was amazing. Still to this day, I get feedback from people kind of going, will it come back? People came up from, even though it wasn't, the whole thing was, it wasn't London. People came from London to be at it. Everyone loved it. It was such great hype. Headline speaker was Craig Parkinson, who's now a friend of mine. Yeah. H from Line of Duty, or the Grand Serpent from Doctor Who. And he does an excellent podcast called the Two Shot Podcast.
He does, yeah, it's great.
And he's actually expressed an interest in being part of the collective moving forward, which is great. Now, nice. What happened was we were very lucky that we did it in November 2019. January 2020, we had an initial meeting with Spotify about moving forward for the next event in November 2020. And then everything kind of changed with COVID. So what we did was we did a couple of online events on the back of that, and that was interesting because it wasn't quite the same. It was a shorter time frame, but we were able to open it up. So we went from like 150 people to 450, 500 people because people from America could join in now, all these things. Then we did a couple of specialist bits like a legal workshop. We also have done a couple of workshops in terms of working with different groups. So I've just done another one with Script Yorkshire. We've done a couple of them now. So it's a writing group. And it still exists. It's still there. But what's happened is as things have grown and as the world stopped and started again and stopped, and especially in Manchester where it was based, we had rolling lockdowns that kept coming in and coming back. So when it got back to the stage where we could start to do it again, several things had happened. Firstly, the venue that we had gone. Oh, right. They closed down. Even the coffee supply that we had, because we tried to use a lot of local people as well. Yeah. They'd gone out of business. Because they'd been decimated by it. And also for the three of us that make it, things had changed for us. We'd just got busier in different ways. So Vic Turnbull and Kate Cocker, incredible women, more successful than me in terms of awards now, annoyingly. They've both had British Podcast Awards since then. Kate's podcast, Everyday Positivity, has really taken off. It's become a whole movement now. There's probably going to be a festival next year that she does with that. Yeah. She's currently in Kenya doing some recording for her podcast business on Safari. Vic has really pushed forward with Mike Media as podcasting as a social enterprise. She's close to having a facility like this where we're recording today. Cool. Which will be really exciting if that happens. By the way, she runs Mike's podcast group, MIC. Find us online. She does a monthly meetup. Her and Charles Commons run that. It's fucking brilliant. It's very simple. It's 2 hours, first or second Wednesday of every month. And literally what happens is we come on, chat for about 55 minutes, have a 5-minute comfort break, come back in, same again. Format tends to be, one section will be any questions, and then most of the time they'll have like a guest speaker who'll come along and do something. And it's not very formal, it's just they'll talk about what they're doing and that kind of thing. But it's a really nice community, and we have a live event coming up in Leeds. I say we, that's what it is. It's absolutely nothing to do with me, but I feel very much part of the community. Yeah. Anyway, so with us all doing that, and then obviously what I've been doing, we just haven't been in that position to do that. Also, there is a certain advantage in doing something without having all the information, because you'll say yes to things when you don't fully know what it involves. Now that we've been through and done it once, we know how much work's involved in doing that and making it work. And so one of the things we agreed on was we would hire someone to make it happen. And we had somebody in line. We'd spoke to somebody about doing that, but then again, they've now moved on to a different job because these things have happened. And because we're approaching it more like that, like a business now, for that to happen, we have to get the funding in place before we can bring somebody on to help with that side of things. And so it's simply a ducks in a row game.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. But I have to admit, there's two things that I'm very split down the middle on this. There's part of me that just kind of goes, you know, if you got the chance to play at St. James's Park, right? And you scored an overhead kick, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would make sure they got that on film, and then you would never play football again, right? You would just go
Probably,
like,
yeah.
you just gotta go, done it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, because you can only get worse. You can only get worse from that
Downhill
moment.
from
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Doesn't
And
get any better than that.
And so there's part of me that's like that. It's really nice. It's a nice memory. It opens doors for me now. The fact that I'm still part of this, I'm still connected with that in many ways. But then also it's like I went to the pod show this year, and I went last year just to see, because it was over happening. If you've not been to it, happens in London Business Design Centre, and trying to be kind about it. It's good that there is a podcast event in the UK. They have many of the right ingredients for something like this.
All the right notes, not necessarily in the right order.
That kind of thing. Yeah. And also it's quite a corporate.
This was which event, sorry?
This is the podcast show.
Oh, the
podcast show.
It's been going for a while, hasn't it?
So they were affected by COVID.
Right, yeah.
So I think they were going to launch in May 2020. Obviously, it didn't happen. So they've done 21. They've done 22 and 23. So they've only done 2.
Yeah.
Because there was another COVID thing back last year. But I think potentially what happened is because it didn't happen, that may have added to the fact that more people got involved and more people applied to have it. And so it just looks like my spare room. That's all I'm going to say. There's lots of great stuff in there if I can find it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it. I'm hopeful that it will get better, but also I think it's moving towards the more high-end version of things, like the more corporate, the more production companies, and there's still this massive gap for the indies, the really creative, the people that I'm really excited about, people meeting the passionate people, the great ideas, the people that are approaching it differently. And also, like, this is such an exciting time for podcasting because we are approaching, like, podcasting's 21st birthday, right? We're not far from that. And that means you have a whole generation of people who weren't alive when there wasn't podcasting. Yeah? And so a lot of the stuff that we've been through and other people we've had to unlearn to do what we're doing. Yeah? Whether it's the video production side of things, because it was a different way. Whereas you've got this whole generation now, which I'm so excited about, which is just like
they've grown up with it.
They've grown up with it.
It's like youngsters grown up with mobile phones or the internet or what comes with that? What are they going to do with that?
Youngsters. I'm 27.
I am definitely not young anymore.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see some really interesting things happen now. We're going to hear some amazing content, and and also there's going to be people that just don't even touch it.
Yeah.
Because they're all about something else or video or whatever, and we're like, oh, okay, missed out. But the fact is, there were people that it's just an exciting possibility, whereas for us, it's been like oh, but you can't do that because of, and I think you're going to have a whole generation, which will be why not? That's my hopes for it.
You go, well, I've done it.
Yeah.
And you go, oh.
And I think as well, like, what they'll do as well is they'll just create stuff. You know, if it isn't there, they'll have the ideas and they'll just make something work. Rather than, did I tell you I had an interview at BBC Sounds?
No, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, so I had an interview at BBC
When was
Sounds
this?
so it was about 18 months ago.
Okay.
18 months ago. So the job wasn't a production job, but it was basically it was working at the heart of BBC Sounds as a kind of a go-between between all the big podcast organizations and hosts and networks and all the radio stations and people that make stuff for BBC Sounds. And it was just trying to sort of maximize like podcast content on BBC Sounds.
Yeah.
And it was all going really well. And then they asked me what I thought about BBC Sounds.
And you were brutally honest.
I couldn't not be. And I was like, and in the end I went, so it was a Zoom because of the time we were on. It was a Zoom interview. And I went, can I just share my screen with you? So I shared my screen and I just ripped it apart. And they said, what can we do to improve? And I was like,
Start again.
pretty much. I was like, but basically what happened was, I think the guy that made it and then left. But there's so much that I love the fact that the BBC have what they've done.
Embraced it, haven't they?
I love that, but also
It's very clunky. I find it.
And also, there's just so many things that when you look out, and there's so many great things out there, and they just seem oblivious to it as well.
Yeah.
And also as well, like the way the BBC set up as well. And I was like, so they said to me, "What's the best podcast you heard this year?" And I was like, straight away, Fight of the Century. I don't know if you've heard that one. This
No.
a while back. So Fight of the Century is BBC 5 Live. Oh, sorry, this was. So did the BBC Sounds, and then I had an interview for BBC 5 Live as well.
Okay.
And so this is the big BBC podcast, BBC 5 Live podcast. It was the sporting, if you're not in the UK, news and sport podcast, radio network. And so they had this show called Fight of the Century. Now, this is about the first fight between Muhammad Ali and, is it Foreman?
George Foreman, Rumble in the Jungle?
Yeah, but the very, because they'd fought a couple of times.
Thriller and Vanilla.
No. Well, no.
George Foreman or Joe Fraser?
Joe Fraser. That was
Right,
it. So the first fight that he had with Joe Fraser.
Yeah,
so, but it took about like 6 years for that fight to happen, right? And it's fucking brilliant as a piece of audio to listen to, right? Because what it does is, because this is like, we're looking end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, this was all happening. You don't have the same resources that we have with lots of other things. And also Joe Fraser and Muhammad Ali weren't the superstars that they later became, right? So there's very limited audio footage. If they just used what they had, it'd be like a 20-minute episode and that would be it. So what they did was they hired actors and wrote a script, and they kind of guessed what kind of conversations would have been had and put some real quotes in there, right? So they did that. They then get Nas, the rapper, to do the voiceover. And I was like, what the this is weird. What has he got to do with it? And then, but it just fucking works and it's brilliant. And also the music is great because it's that sort of Vietnam period of like all those songs from that period. But what it does is it goes year by year with the different stories that episode. The music changes as it goes through the seasons and the different. Anyway, the whole thing works brilliantly, right? It's so good. Nas is really connected into, I think he's got roots in the city and also like musically as well. It just makes so much sense. And it's just brilliant perfection. Said, what didn't you like about it? Right? I said, what would you change about it? So I was like, I wouldn't have made it. I said, I think you've spent your money in the wrong place. Absolutely not made it. Because they were really pushing as a station to get a younger audience in. And I said, but you've made something that happened 50 years ago. and I know about sport, and I know about boxing, so I knew a little bit about that.
Younger
But still
generation,
before my time.
unless they're actually into boxing, they're not going to be interested.
Yeah,
Are they?
and it's like, and I go like, if you want to make something about boxing, look at the KSI Paul Logan
Yeah,
fight.
yeah.
You know, the
Yeah.
main. That's what you want to make, right? But then that's the thing is, I can be quite brutal and honest. Didn't get that job either.
No.
But there we go. But then I think that's the BBC. Any big organisation, you've got so many voices, so many stakeholders, so many people going. It's really difficult.
They're
to,
very
like,
defensive.
But it's also really difficult to get everything pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's a lot of parts
that's
to
the
it.
issue, Yeah.
But
So-
BBC Sounds, yeah, it has evolved. They have sort of, they are making it tweaks and changes and making it better. But I don't know if they still do it now, but there was some things where it was only available on Sounds,
Yeah. So
and I was like, well, I like how they like as a place for all BBC stuff, great, but it should also be available wherever else is available
Yeah.
as well.
But then this started happening. In fact, we talked about this the first time I came and did the show. It was about how they were starting to pull all the Star Wars content and the Marvel content over to Disney Plus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were bringing all that in, that kind of thing. And different channels have done it. But then people backtrack and things change. Like Luminary set up as a podcast network about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah,
And one
they've
of the
gone
things
now,
they
haven't they?
well, one of the things they said was, we're never going to have podcast adverts. And they still exist, and they've just signed up to start carrying adverts through Acast. Right? But this happens. This things change. The people that run the company, the forecast, the needs of the shareholders, those kind of things. See, this is the thing. Once you move into that side of things, it's not all down to you. And this is the one advantage that you have when you are an independent creator. Like you, as a musician, right? You can write the songs that you want. You can write the music that you want, right? And I've heard your music, right? So if I come to you and say, please write me a lullaby for my nephew, right? Yeah. If you do it the way you want to do it, it may not be appropriate for getting him to sleep, right? But then the thing is, if it is you're being paid for it, then it's like, okay, I can do it, but it's not what you want to do. And I think there's this element of like these changes that happen, and it's about that negotiation and how you maneuver and go through that. So anyway, I feel like I keep straying into like TED Talk territory.
That's fine.
with this.
Fine. Well, so how long have we been going?
2.5 hours.
Wow, boom,
Nothing.
like that.
Like
Well-
Joe Rogan wouldn't have even gone to the toilet yet.
You can go to the toilet if you want to go.
He would have just been finished talking about me undies.
Yeah.
Yeah, just leave an advert running.
Did you see? There was a great thing on. I don't know if you ever read The Onion. Which is spoof news, and it's been around for forever. Famously, it's one of these things where it predicted the future, because they did this thing about razors, and it was about the time the Gillette Mach 4 came out, which had 4 blades on, and so they did this article which was like called "Fuck it, well let's just do 5." And then what happened a few years later? Gillette announced the Mach 5.
Brilliant.
So
I love
yeah,
stuff
so
like that.
there was a thing that they did where how podcasting had gone into crisis because everyone had a WordPress website and a new mattress. So it was like suddenly there was no funding because every listener had gone out and bought one.
But yeah, COVID. I mean, I did some. Obviously, I did remote podcasts while then. They weren't as good, but it was good to like, allowed me to talk to some people who I wouldn't normally be able to talk to. But I spoke to you, and like, what was COVID like for you? Did you stop working? Also, obviously, you can do stuff remotely, so
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with COVID was I had a lot of friends that had just set up as podcast businesses. They'd gone self-employed. They'd done all that thing. So, you know, that was hell for them. You know, some of these people had families as well.
yeah.
Because they weren't, because of when they'd done it, they weren't entitled to any of the grants.
Yeah.
The things that came through until like the 4th section. And still, it was great that they
Yeah,
got
because a lot of them, like, you've got to be in training for 6 months, or you're not eligible. or
and they
something
were
like
just missed out by days on this kind of thing. But it was brutal in that sense. And so I knew people that was, you know, and you kind of feel like I've inspired them to maybe go off and do this at some point
And
as
then
well.
this has happened,
And then this has happened.
It's force majeure, innit?
I mean, for me, my sister was, I was with my parents, my sister, and my nephew, and got to spend 3 months with my 3-year-old nephew, which he turned 3 while we were with him, which was brilliant because normally I wouldn't get that. They live quite far away, so normally wouldn't have got that opportunity to spend that time with him. And it was brilliant, and I really got to know him and get a really good bond with him. And I spent some good time with my parents as well, and helped them sort of do stuff with the garden, a couple of big jobs around the house. I did the plank challenge. I did the
There's lots of bored people doing challenges, isn't there?
all these kind of things. Although the thing was, I signed up to do this plank challenge with a couple of American friends that I'd met because I just got back from Podfest in America, and I honestly thought that it was the thing where you just lie really still and take a photo. I didn't realize it was basically being in the press-up position for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, but by the end of it, we got there and we did it, and that was great. But I was like, I got really good at cooking. I learned how to, I spent a lot of time. I mean, I was good already. I made limoncello. I made seitan.
I don't know what that is.
Seitan. So basically, when you gluten, if the gluten in wheat, that gluten. So you can buy glutinous wheat. So when they make something gluten free, they take the gluten out of it, but then they sell that as well, and that you can manipulate, and you make it into like a fake meat. So you can broil it. So a lot of these things that you get where like it has certain textures and things, and then it's the kind of thing when you cook it, it will have that similar thing to meat when it'll kind of like when you pull it apart and you see the stringiness and the things like that. Again, it's a weird thing about us vegans why we go into that kind of thing, but it was just exciting to learn how to do that and try it. But the also enabled me to reconnect with people, and of course, being me and being locked down, started some new podcasts.
Of course,
So my friend had this idea, although that was probably one of the more complex ones that we did because he was in Mexico at the time. He's a DJ that back in the day produced me when I was on radio, and he was like, "Oh man, all the football stopped, but I don't really watch football anyway. But Korea is just about to start the K-League, and they've got things started, so." We all picked a K-League side and watched the K-League.
I remember you telling me about this.
So we launched the K-League show, but it actually became more about Korean culture.
Yeah.
And that was a real education. And that's hopefully next year I'm going to get out to go and see, that. And actually, that was one of the things we said when we were like working out our why for the show. What's our big secret mission? Our goal would be to end up in Korea and go and see a game in Korea.
Yeah.
That was one of the things from that. But that just again because the other guy, was doing a lot of childcare and things like that as well. It was just difficult to get the time. So we, it was a great experiment, but they weren't podcasters as such.
Yeah.
And so they weren't used to the routine and the commitments, and we just couldn't make it work. But it was great. It's a great education. Worked on that. We launched a Pods Up podcast as well, and that was a high concept idea, and the idea was to have a channel which was going to be a different podcast each episode, but made specifically. So not like we weren't playing somebody else's podcast. The idea was that to give people an easy introduction. Yeah. Right. And so what we did was somebody who wanted to produce an edit, I was like, well, look, I've got this interview. I'll give that to you. You go and make it into whatever you want. And then if you want, we'll get somebody else to do the voiceover. So I made a couple of episodes of that. Although it was very difficult to maintain them with everything else going on. And again, we weren't able to get together and work on that.
Yeah.
But again, it was a great idea and it worked well. And probably in 6 months' time, somebody else will do something similar and smash it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just experimented with lots of different things like that.
Because I did Behind the Lockdown.
You did
about 10 episodes of that. But then I
did
also
the football one.
Behind the Ball, which didn't quite. There's just too many technical issues where you couldn't hit. Because the idea was me and a guest would play we'll play FIFA.
Yes.
I'll be my team. My guest would be their team. We'd play and we'd comment on it and talk. Which was it did work, but I couldn't get the guest to hear the audio of the game.
Yes.
And then it just.
But was it? But I think we weren't playing either. We were watching the
so
computer play itself.
The computer would simulate a game between two teams, and I learned how to take away all the bump on the screen. So it's literally just the football, no numbers, no names, no nothing, and it worked quite well. There's a few glitches in FIFA at the time. I remember Phil Foden came on as a sub, already as captain with his armband on.
Yeah.
Already.
But the thing is
It
that's
was quite good, actually.
there's quite a few YouTube channels that do that, especially with a lot of the stuff that I make. Sometimes I'll be looking for highlights, trying to capture a bit of audio from something as well, and I'll go like, United, Newcastle, City, and then like 3-1 against Arsenal, whatever, and then I'll pull it up and I'll go, oh, that's fucking FIFA. Someone's just like,
you always used to get that.
Yeah.
But in a way, that's AI predicting. Like, you could sort of get two teams who are about to play each other in real life, and you could get FIFA to sort of like
and
predict
the crazy thing is this has been happening for a while, because if you go back, even like 15 years to Rocky Balboa, and that's the thing in that film before he Sylvester Stallone fights again, is they have this simulation that they do with him and the current world champion in a thing that happens, and obviously that was then happening there was a Rocky game on the PS2 which allowed you to do that with different generations of Rocky, and then so this is again life imitating art.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, is anything you want to talk about? Anything you brought?
There is actually, and just
we need a name for this. What did you bring? What's in your
bring?
bag?
Show and tell.
Show and tell. What's in your bag?
So you've probably seen this, and you can pull up some images from this, but I wrote a little introduction for this because I think it's appropriate. Because there are people whose ingenuity and bravery changed the course of human history. And I'm not talking about kings or queens here, or generals or billionaires. I'm talking about the visionaries that get their hands dirty, right? So that they'll be leading the charge, not just sending people that way. And I'm talking about a chap called Reza Baluchi. That's REZABALUCHI. You might know him better when you're associated with the words giant inflatable hamster ball. Yes. His heart's in the right place. Some people aren't so sure about his brain, and those people are the US Coast Guard, who really don't like what he's doing. Now, he keeps doing this thing for charity where he basically builds this giant inflatable hamster wheel.
What the hell is that?
And he tries to cross oceans in it, right? So he's built this thing himself. Now, it's environmental, right? There's no pollution because it's powered by him. He runs in it, yeah? And that's what turns it. So it's environmental, so he gets a big green tick. He's doing it for charity as well. He encourages school children to follow him. And his most recent one was he was traveling from down the coast of Florida, right? And this was the thing about people to follow him. Now, however, his lack of awareness of weather systems is what's causing him problems. Because on 3 occasions now, he's had to be rescued by the US Coast Guard.
Oh, God.
And they've kind of got sick of it a little bit, and they've actually arrested him now. Because what's happening is he's just kind of gone, I'm here, it's there, I'll get in, I'll go down there. But what's happening is, apart from running, he's got no real way of steering this thing. So he's completely subject to the currents.
Or knowing what course he's on.
No. So he's just kind of point and go, but roughly, yeah. So I really like this guy, right? And I think this is something that it could be in the future that people are going to come and say, he was the one that inspired me to do this. This is the precursor for manned flight or manned trips to Mars or whatever. He's in that level. You know? He is like Laika the dog, effectively. This is what we're talking about here. Anyway, so he is
44 years old.
So yeah, his most recent one. This is the best thing about it is so. Anybody that's ever been to America, that's quite a flight, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long flight.
His most recent trip, although he was caught 30 miles down the coast of Florida or something, his actual intended destination was London. He was planning to cross the Atlantic. But effectively, he was planning to run across the Atlantic. Now, if you think about this, look how big Jesus is, and he only walked on water. This guy's running, right? Now, the problem with this is, it's got to the point where the Coast Guard have got pissed off with him, and they've arrested him, they've detained him. Now the problem is with this, he's there was a bit of a standoff as well, which is unpleasant at the end. But he ended up getting arrested by the Coast Guard, and my worry is that this is going to lead to him being imprisoned, which does make you wonder how that's going to go. That first time in the yard or around at lunchtime in the mess, and you sat down, and it's like, oh, what you in for? It's like, oh, I'm the head of a international crime family, yeah, drugs, armed robbery. I'm a serial killer. I tried to go on holiday in a giant hamster ball. Now that's either going to put you right. You're going to be a legend in the prison, or you're not going to last the night. Yeah. So, but this is Reza Bellucci. If you haven't seen the story, I highly recommend you go look it out. But giant inflatable hamster ball.
There's all the different times he's been caught.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is that one of the tweets from Flagler Sheriff County Office is they reported it this morning. The sheriff's office responded to a call about a vessel washing ashore in the hammock area, which sounds like something else. But
Don't they get him? For God's sakes, get some sort of navigation system on this.
Yeah, but honestly, this could be the future of transport. You know, especially from an environmental point of view that we're.
He could be a pioneer, really.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what I'm talking about. So a saint or sinner. This is, you know.
I tell you what, the level of product placement on this website is unbelievable.
Yeah. But
Brooklyn Brewery.
Need a block.
I do love that. Well, and thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure. You're an absolute legend.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do it again in another 4 years.
Yeah.
I might come to you.
Yeah, do that. Well, look, come check out. You never know, but next time we might be on tour. We might even be coming doing a show here. Yeah, come check out what we're doing.
Where can people find you?
So, Wrestling with the Champ is the name of the show. You will find that on our website, wrestlingwiththechamp.com. Just put that into Spotify.
And if you want to find you?
If you want to find me, find me at Ant McGinley on Twitter and on Instagram. Podomedy is our new thing that we've set up as well.
We'll put links to all that in the show notes.
And yeah, we've just, as I say, we've got a new season of the podcast coming up. There's already loads of stuff out there. There's like 30 episodes. We're producing stuff all the time. Lots of social media. There's another book coming. Potentially a film.
Wow!
I want to do a video game. And also as well, like After the Gravy,
it's going
like,
up and up and up.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, like, honestly, what's happened with this, and I'm going to leave this with the people. I know I said something about it before, but like the worst thing that can happen is everything stays the same, right? So much has happened to me just in this last year. Never mind everything else, just because I've tried stuff, just because I've gone and done that. Now, I don't think I'm particularly gifted or special or talented compared to other people. I think a lot of it is just that I've gone for it, and when I've gone for it and I've gone out there and done stuff, things have happened. I've met people, I've had experiences, I've seen a new destination.
Opportunities have come.
Yeah, and so my advice is like, you know, if you want to try something like this. And I'm not saying, because it almost sounds like if you want a life like mine. No, it's not about that. It's like, you know, whatever it is in life, like you can spend so much sitting around and wishing and daydreaming, thinking, I could do that. Oh, if only I knew this. You could do it. You can do it. And you know what? It doesn't matter what happens. It's about doing it. And so, I mean, this is kind of like, can be applied to so many situations. But if you have something like that, just go and fucking do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice.
That's how I summarise a lot of things. Throw enough shit and some of it'll stick.
I mean, I'd refer to my products as slightly higher quality than that, but...
it's principle.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, man. Until next time.
Yeah, amazing.
Cheers. See you.